My brother framed me for a crime, let me carry it for 20 years. Then asked me for $10,000 over dinner with my wife. I never imagined a simple dinner could detonate like that. Casual, warm, and familiar, it suddenly transforms into a slow-motion car crash that you can't look away from. It was Sunday, as always. My folks prefer routine. Mom had prepared her renowned pot roast, and Dad was already pouring his second glass of bourbon before I had removed my coat. The aroma of roasted carrots and beef broth permeated the home, which normally soothed me. But that day, it only made me feel nauseous. My wife, Kane, gave me that look. The one who urged, just get through it, and we can leave after pie. We had done this 100 times before. Sit down, smile, and tolerate Derek. But today was unlike the others. Derek arrived late as usual. His hair was slicked back, as if he were still 23. Despite the fact that it was nearly 90 degrees outside, I wore my leather jacket. He walked in with the same confident grin, as if we were all extras in the movie of his life. He greeted Mom with a hearty kiss, clapped Dad on the shoulder like they were barmates rather than father and son, and gave Kane a wink that turned my stomach. I did not say anything. I never do anything right immediately. I let Derek burn himself out first. Dinner started off well. Surface-level communication, like families do when they're too afraid to be honest. Mom inquired about Kane's work. Dad complained about the price of gasoline. And Derek, Derek, spoke about Derek. I cannot recall any half-baked anecdote about a company initiative in Austin or Denver. Something concerning real estate and NFTs. Some buzzwords that signified nothing, but were impressive to individuals who stopped learning new things in 2007. Kane lifted her eyebrows across the table, silently pleading with me not to laugh. Then something happened. Derek sat back in his chair, wiped his lips with a napkin, and then dropped it, as if it were nothing. "Hey Mark," he remarked casually, as if he were asking to borrow the remote. "Listen. I need to talk to you about something. It's kind of serious." I knew exactly where it was headed. I'd heard that tone before, a blend of faux humility and unwarranted expectation. "I need 10 grand, he said. Just like that. $10,000. As if it were pocket change. He said that without looking at anyone. "It's just me." As if it were already decided. Kane froze in mid-bite. Mom gazed down into her mashed potatoes, as if they were a magic 8-ball that could provide her an escape. Dad's jaw moved only once, but he remained silent. That was his thing. Behave as if quiet made you wise. It does not. I put down my fork. Not because I was astonished, but because I wanted him to know I had finished devouring him. "No," I replied. One word, without hesitation. Derek blinked, as if it had never occurred to him that I would say no. "What?" He laughed, as if I were joking. "Dude, it's just 10 grand. "It's not just anything," I responded calmly. "And I'm not giving it to you." The silence was audible. It spread across the table like barbed wire. Kane moved over and placed her hand on my knee beneath the table, as if she knew what was about to happen. Derek sat forwards now. The smile was gone, his voice increased. "You owe me, man. You owe me." He smashed his fist hard on the table, causing Mom to flinch. "You think I forgot what I did for you in college?" I did not say anything. I did not move. But then the air changed. That's when everything in the room buckled under the weight of what he had just stated. Kane turned to face me, her hand squeezing my thigh tightly. My parents froze as if someone had pressed pause. You could practically hear the wheels churning within their skulls. Derek continued going. "You remember that night, huh? That party. I covered for you. I saved your ass. You'd be in prison if it weren't for me." And that's when I looked him directly in the eyes, and I shouted it calmly, like a church bell in winter. "Fine. Let's talk about what you really covered. Have you ever seen someone's soul try to re-enter their body?" That was Derek at that time. His mouth opened and closed, then opened again. He looked at Mom, Dad, and Kane. Unfortunately, it was too late. The words were out. Everyone had overheard him. Everyone witnessed the mask crack. Mom turned pale. Dad clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles became white. Kane slowly released her grip on my hand. And me? I did not move an inch. Because really, I've been waiting for that moment for 20 years. Every birthday. Every holiday. Every time Derek referred to himself as the family's hero. I bit my tongue so hard I could taste blood. I carried that night like a ghost in my pocket, knowing it would eventually come out to breathe. So yes, Derek wanted to open the door. Fine. He kicked it down himself. Now we're all strolling through it, and I'm done pretending I don't remember what happened that night. Everyone just heard what you said, Derek, I said, my voice firm as if I had practiced it 1,000 times. So now I'm done protecting you. I was probably around 19 or 21 years old at the time. Hell, time blurs. I recall it was senior year. Yes, I was 22. The math probably doesn't add up, but I've never trusted my memory when it comes to that night. That night did not seem like a recollection. It seemed like a poor snapshot, overexposed in the wrong spots and missing what I needed to see. All I knew for certain was that the next morning, I awoke with a searing headache, blood on my knuckles, and a school security officer knocking on my dorm room door, as if he was delivering death. The celebration was meant to be a blowout. A classic end-of-semester disaster with cheap booze, louder music, and even louder regrets. I went to Delta Toe because someone told me they had jungle juice so potent that you forgot your own name. And maybe that's precisely what I wanted that night. To forget. My grades were okay. My life was uninteresting. My girlfriend had just dumped me by text message, and I was too cowardly to acknowledge I missed her. So I went, drank, danced, shouted, and passed out. It wasn't the first time, nor would it be the last, but it was the only time I awoke with people staring at me, as if I'd done something wrong. Derek wasn't even meant to be present. He was still in high school at the time, a punk youngster with a phony ID and a wild streak as broad as the Mississippi. He romanticized college life like it was a goddamn movie, and he would sneak up to see me while pretending he had somewhere else to be. I occasionally let him crash on the floor. I didn't think much of it until that night, when I discovered that he had also crashed the party. He appeared while I was halfway through my third red solo cup of whatever was in that barrel, and disappeared into the crowd as if he owned the area. The following morning, everything seemed strange. I couldn't recall what I had done, but everyone looked at me as if I had set the place on fire. I kept hearing whispers. Mark? That guy? Are they serious? Nobody would give me straight answers, just vague allegations and stares, followed by the university police, who indicated there had been a complaint. A girl. Her name was not on the documentation they handed me, but they did say there was an incident on the upstairs landing sometime after midnight. My name came up. Witnesses placed me there. My blood alcohol level was really high, and I had no memory of anything. That's when Derek stepped in. He drew me aside outside the administrative office, eyes wide and voice low, and said, "Don't say anything, do not confess. I'll handle it." That aspect is very distinct in my memory. "I'll handle it," he offered, as if he were making a heroic gesture by stepping in to save me from my own mess. He said he'd talk to someone, perhaps the girl, or someone else. It was all hazy, and by the next day, everything had vanished. The complaint was withdrawn. No charges were filed. The school aggressively pushed me to take the semester off. My parents were furious, yet relieved. Nobody had too many inquiries. And Derek? He wore it like a badge. When I asked him about it later, he just laughed and said, "You owe me, dude." Big time. I figured he'd brushed things over somehow. Perhaps he had persuaded the girl it was not serious. Maybe I had done something and didn't want to know. That was the sick part. I did not want to know. I let the shame sink in. I let it sit, and I structured my existence around avoiding it. I told myself that I was lucky. I told myself he had saved me. I told myself several things. But after what he said at dinner, and after watching him weaponize that secret like a loaded gun pointing at my head, I began to reconsider. I began to question whose mess it actually was. I started digging. I looked back through some old folders my father had stored in the attic. He saved everything. Letters, notes, and even some of my old academic materials. A yellow envelope contained a letter from the school dated April 2003. It was not addressed to me. It was addressed to my father. In it, the dean mentioned a misunderstanding between both sons. Both sons. I read that section again. That did not make sense. I was the one who enrolled. Derek was not even on the official radar. So why would they mention both of us? I began emailing and calling. I went out to an old classmate who had attended the party. He didn't remember much either, but he did recall seeing Derek arguing with someone at the bottom of the steps. I think he was trying to get some girl's attention, he told me, but she freaked out. She appeared to be attempting to flee. My hands were shaking as I typed the name into my laptop. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, a clue, a post, or anything. And there it was. The blog. A dusty little site with 3 articles and an image that took my breath away. That was her. I didn't know what her name was back then. I do now. Emily Cartwright. She recalls everything. It took 3 days for her to respond to the email I wrote. Emily Cartwright. The girl from that night. I hadn't seen her face in 2 decades, but she haunted the corners of my mind like a ghost I refused to name. When her message arrived, I opened it as if it would explode in my hands. I was half expecting rage, misunderstanding, or nothing at all. But instead she scribbled only one sentence. If you really want to talk, I'm ready. We met at a coffee shop on the outskirts of town. The sort with chipped paint on the walls and lousy acoustic coverings that play just loud enough to make nothing feel private. She stepped in wearing a long gray coat and a scarf, despite the fact that the weather did not call for it. She recognized me right away, and I knew she had, despite the years. Her smile was tight as if saying, I'm here but don't mistake this for forgiveness. I thanked her for coming, but the words felt empty even as I spoke them. We sat across from each other, 2 strangers bonded by one terrible night. I had no idea how to begin. She helped me out. You don't recall anything, do you? She inquired, stirring a cup of tea that contained neither sugar or milk, only heat. I shook my head slowly, feeling humiliated all over again. Only fragments, I replied. Noise. A stairway. My brother said he would fix it. She nodded and took a minute to look aside. She said again, but this time more quietly. I wasn't even supposed to be there, she explained. My roommate dragged me outside. She said we needed one night of fun before exams. She laughed lightly but bitterly. Hollow. You were already out of it when I arrived. Drunk beyond reason, stumbling. I remember thinking someone should have cut you off hours ago. I remained mute. I had no resistance, even after so many years. I went upstairs to use the bathroom, she began, her voice calm now, as if she had prepared these words in the mirror before arriving. He followed me. Not you, him, Derek. He cornered me on the landing. He smelled like cannabis and booze. He tried to be charming, as if he knew me. I didn't even know his name. I said no. He did not like that. He tried to thrust himself on me. Hands on my waist. Mouth too close. My hands clenched beneath the table, nails cutting into my palms. I shoved him off. She continued, unflinching now. He stumbled, hit the wall, cursed at me, called me a... I ran downstairs, he informed a pal. She informed campus security. Then the next day, everything became crazy. They claimed it was you. They reported that several individuals spotted you up there, that you were intoxicated and violent, that you had become aggressive. She stared at me now, her eyes black and unyielding. I didn't see your face clearly that night, but I remember your voice. And it was not yours. I tried to inform them, but someone, your father I believe, called me. He told you were being sent home, that you were being helped. He stated that the person who had wounded me was no longer present, and he pledged that it would not happen again. He offered to pay for the therapy. For silence. And I was tired. I was afraid. So I let it go. I felt something heavy and icy descend into my chest. I had no idea this weight was mine. He told you I was gone, I reiterated. She nodded. He informed me you were going. And the other one, the genuine one, had been dealt with. So I did not press charges. I wanted to shout, to cry, to punch a wall. I would go back 20 years and drag Derek down those steps myself. But instead, I simply sat there and whispered, he lied to you. She did not answer immediately. She just looked at me like she'd seen the whole image, and didn't like any of it. After we parted ways, I drove silently. There's no music, no podcasts, just the sound of tires on the pavement and 1,000 ideas racing through my head. Derek had utilized me as a body shield, with our father's cooperation. I stopped at a gas station on my way home, not to fill up, but because I needed air. I stood in the parking lot, hands on knees, thinking about how many times I had thanked Derek for saving me over the years. When I returned home, I retrieved an old lockbox from the attic. Inside were tax paperwork, birth certificates, and a slew of date-stamped envelopes. One stood out, April 2003. Inside, a duplicate of the check, written by my father to Derek for $8,000. Memo line labeled, Spring Tuition. Only Derek was not enrolled in anything. He had never applied to college that year. That money wasn't for tuition. It was silent. I stared at it till the sun went down, when Kane discovered me on the floor and asked what was going on. I did not respond to her. Not yet. I glanced at that check as if it were a crime scene photo. You lied to rescue yourself, Derek. I bore your guilt for 20 years. Now it is your time. The turkey was dry. The wine was very sugary. And the entire house felt as if it were holding its breath, waiting for the storm that no one saw coming. Thanksgiving in my parents' house was usually stiff, forced, and involved a lot of pretending. This year, however, the air felt heavy, as if the walls knew what was about to happen before the people inside them. I hadn't spoken to Derek since the dinner explosion 3 weeks ago, and the stillness between us had become deafening. He still showed up, of course. Walking in with the same swagger, smiling like a man with no shame to lose. He offered my mother a bottle of alcohol, which erased everything. I gave my dad a smack on the back as if they were still on the same team. He then sat across from me, smirking as if he still had the upper hand. He did not. I'd spent the last 3 weeks rummaging through memories that I'd tried for years to forget. I talked to people I hadn't spoken to since college. I looked into bank records and disciplinary reports. Anything that may back up what I already knew in my bones. But I did not come here to produce documents. I came here to tear him apart in front of everyone. In the only language he knew. Control. I knew Derek. I knew how to pull his strings quietly. And tonight I planned to play him like a piano. Dinner was awkward from the beginning. My mother attempted to appear normal, handing the dishes as if she wasn't dying within. My father barely spoke, simply carving the turkey as if it were a problem he could solve with a sharp knife. Kane sat next me, quiet but awake, her fork pushing food around rather than eating it. Derek broke the silence with small chat and jokes that fell flat. Pretending nothing had occurred. Pretending he hadn't broken the family's fragile calm with a single statement and a smirk. He thought if he just pretended everything was all right, it would be. That was always his trick. Rewrite the story loudly enough, so that people forgot what actually happened. I waited for dessert. That's when everyone's guard lowers. That's when they realize they might have gotten through another holiday without spilling blood on the tablecloth. My mother was getting out the pumpkin pie when I cleared my throat and said, Derek, do you remember that night in college when you covered for me? The room froze. Forks lingered. My mom's fingers trembled slightly, causing the pie to shift on the platter. Derek looked up from his coffee with those big innocent eyes he'd honed since boyhood. Man, are we seriously bringing that up again? He stated with a giggle that didn't quite register. Water under the bridge, right? Yeah, I answered casually, as if I were only reminiscing. But I thought about it. I'm trying to remember the details. Isn't it funny how it all went down? He narrowed his eyes slightly, sensing the trap but not seeing it yet. You were blackout drunk, he remarked, leaning back as if he were lecturing me on my life. You can't remember anything. That is why I stepped in. That's the thing, I murmured, leaning forward and keeping my voice even. I didn't remember anything. Until recently. His jaw tightened slightly, enough for me to notice. I continued going, slow and steady. I talked to Emily, Derek. His coffee cup froze in midair. Clinked back on the saucer. I discovered her blog. I've reached out. She replied. It turns out she recalls everything. The staircase. The jacket. The voice that was not mine. My father looked up. Really looked up. My mother was staring at her lap, as if she didn't move she'd disappear. Derek's voice lowered. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, but I do, I replied. I know you arrived at that gathering uninvited. I understand you followed her upstairs. I know Dad paid you off later. They called it tuition. Want to view the check? Derek's face turned red. He opened his mouth, closed it, and then opened it again, the words fumbling like loose coin in his pocket. You were drunk, he retorted. No one would have believed you over me. So there it was. The crack, the slip, the confession. My mother gasped. Barely audible. My father rose up, face pallid from something I'd never seen before. Not wrath, but something approaching disdain. Kane simply stared at Derek as if he were a stranger who had walked into our house and pissed on the rug. You bastard, Dad said, his voice quivering. We protected the wrong son. Derek attempted to backpedal. Of course you knew what could have happened to him, he remarked with wide eyes. I did not hurt her. Nothing occurred. But you tried, I replied. And you let me carry it for you. My mother began crying, her hands shaking so hard that the pie tumbled to the floor. Nobody moved to clean it up. Derek gazed about like a man looking for a non-existent escape route. And me? I sat there, as calm as a priest at a funeral, watching the structure of falsehoods he'd created collapse around him. He stood, knocking his chair back. Do you think you're better than me? He shouted, but his voice broke halfway through. No, I replied, standing and directing my stare at his. I just finally stopped pretending I'm worse. After then, there was a thick, strangling silence, similar to the time before a storm, when the pressure changes and everything feels out of place. Derek stormed away without saying another word. My father followed, not to stop him, but to ensure his departure. My mother simply wept. Kane said nothing till we were heading home. And even then, she just asked one question. Are you feeling better now? I did not respond right away. I observed the vacant road, the headlights slashing through the darkness like a knife through remorse. I don't know, I finally said. I think I just feel finished. But I was not. Not really. Because revenge is satisfying for about 5 minutes. Then it simply feels like ash in your mouth. Derek, you damaged your own life. I've just given you the match. The days following Thanksgiving felt like winter arrived early. Not in the weather, but in how everything suddenly became frozen between people who had previously shared warmth. Derek did not send any text messages, no calls. Not even one of his cheap apology attempts, which he used to throw around like confetti when his back was against the wall. He seemed to vanish without a trace. As if by telling the truth out loud, I had entirely exorcised him from the family. And perhaps I had. However, the absence did not feel like victory. It seemed like a vacuum. Silence with sharp edges that could slash skin. My father did not speak to me for 5 days following that supper. Then a letter arrived. Very old school. Postmarked from 2 towns away, where he had holed up in someone's cabin. He did not sign it with love or dad. Just scribbled his name at the bottom, as if it were a resignation form. The letter was brief, only a page, and each sentence seemed as if it had been chewed over before being written down. He said he knew. Said he'd known since that morning in 2003, when Derek came home looking more agitated than he'd ever seen him, stating I'd been involved in something horrible, and urging Dad to handle it gently. He said he spoke with a friend on the school board who owed him a favor. He claimed he pulled the proper threads, stopped the appropriate mouths, and persuaded himself it was all to keep the family together. He then admitted something else. That a part of him was always certain it wasn't me. That the timelines did not make sense. That my hangover sprang from bewilderment rather than guilt. He claimed he had convinced himself it didn't matter. That I would recover, go on, and do something worthwhile with my life, which I did. And Derek? He claimed Derek was already broken, and that perhaps he didn't want to break him further. I chose the son I thought could carry it, his letter stated. I didn't ask whether he should. I stared at that line for longer than I'd like to confess. Because buried beneath it was something I didn't want to confront. The only reason the truth remained hidden for so long was that I was the type who could cope with it. I could bottle it up, compress it, and consume it like poison while smiling. And in doing so, perhaps I became the man they all imagined I was. My mother never mentioned it again, at least not out loud. She returned to humming in the kitchen and folding laundry as if nothing had happened. I noticed she started keeping the guest bedroom door shut all the time. She laid 4 plates at the table, even though there were only 3 of us. She inquired how Derek was, but just once, and in such a faint voice that it barely constituted a question. Kane, on the other hand, wasn't as gentle. She cornered me one night when we were brushing our teeth. Her gaze sharpened in the mirror, as if she was gazing through me rather than at me. "I'm proud of you," she murmured, still with toothpaste on her lips. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I did not have a clear answer. I told her the truth, or at least what I could say. That I wasn't sure how to bring it up. That I believed it would ruin everything. That I'd told myself it was dead and buried. But more than that, I told her I didn't want her to see me differently. And I believe this hurt her more than anything else. I spent the next week trying to return to normal. Normal, once fractured, does not reconstitute. It only pretends. I worked. I cooked. I walked the dog. I mowed the yard as if the blades could cut through the weight in my chest. But the silence did not feel like tranquility. It seemed like I was holding my breath for too long, waiting for the air to return. So I drove to see Emily again. Not to apologize, though perhaps I should have, but because I wanted to know what it looked like when someone else survived the same disaster. She agreed to meet. There was no uncertainty in her speech this time. We sat in the same coffee shop, with the same seats, but the silence between us felt different. Not heavy, just real. "I heard he left town," she explained, drinking her tea. "Derek." "I think he did," I said. "Nobody knows where. And no one is actually looking." She nodded, not smiling or frowning. Just accepting. "That makes sense." I almost asked her whether she was all right. But I did not. Because it would have been selfish. I asked after a long pause. "Does it help?" Knowing it was not forgotten. She glanced at me for a moment before responding. Then she said something that stayed with me. Perhaps forever. "I don't think it matters anymore. Closure is simply a nice word for attempting to rewrite something terrible." I nodded, and we sat for a few minutes longer. Just before I left, as I rose up and reached for my coat, she asked the question I'd been dreading since I discovered her name. "Why did you wait 20 years to speak up?" I opened my mouth and nothing came out. Not one word. Because there was no response that did not make me look like a coward. Or a liar. Or both. I simply nodded again, the weight of the question wrapped around my chest like shackles, and walked out into the cold. On the way home, I thought about all the things we never say to each other. All the things we bury because we believe silence equals mercy, courage, or wisdom. Perhaps quiet is simply dread disguised as good intentions. Perhaps the actual sin is not what we do. However, we refuse to call it. Sometimes silence is necessary for survival. However, sometimes it is simply cowardice disguised. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. My family used me to buy their luxury house, then banned me from Christmas, so I evicted them all without warning. "We're not including you in Christmas this year," my mother declared in my living room. I yelled back, "Then I'm removing myself from the mortgage." They laughed until an eviction notice arrived at their door. "My name is Edward. I'm 34 years old. Yes, I am the one who withdrew his name from the mortgage after my mother told me directly that I was not invited to Christmas. But let's go back a little because this didn't happen overnight. This scenario had been growing quietly for years, like a little drip from a pipe in the ceiling, until it exploded on a chilly winter evening, soaking everything I thought was strong. I was always a helpful son. Not the one they adored the most. Not even close. But the dependable one. They contacted him when the automobile broke down, and he showed up when someone needed help with tax paperwork. My younger brother Jacob got away with everything. He was the clear favorite. If I got home late from school, I was chastised. If he staggered in at 3 a.m., it was just lads being boys, even though they smelled like alcohol. I realized early on that my role in the family was more of a tool than a person to care about. After college, I found a steady IT job and saved money. Seriously, I did not go out to parties, vacation, or even replace my car. I set a goal to buy a house before I reached 30, and I succeeded. Okay, sort of. That's where the actual narrative begins. When I was 28, my mother called me at lunch and offered an idea. I already knew what it meant. She always called it a proposal when she wanted anything, but she attempted to make it seem like it would also benefit me. This time the proposal was that she, my stepfather Henry and Jacob, had discovered a fantastic home but couldn't afford it without assistance. "It's big enough for everyone," she remarked, as if we were the perfect family show. "We can grow stronger as a family here. You'll finally have a place to work from home." She also mentioned that I wouldn't have to pay rent anymore. I'm not going to lie, the mansion was stunning. 2 stories, a wide yard, and even a tiny sunroom where I imagined putting books and plants. But of course, I would bear the majority of the expenses. They said it was a wonderful investment for me. They promised to take care of the bills and meals, while I would only pay the mortgage. Jacob would get a job soon and start assisting, my mother added. Henry had some job concerns, but these were being addressed. Everything felt questionable, but I was tired of paying rent. To be honest, I wanted to believe that my family could finally function together. So I agreed. I added my name to the mortgage, paid the down payment with my own money, and moved in with them. And for a brief while, everything seemed fine. We ate together. Jacob acted politely. My mother even appeared proud of me. That probably gave me hope. I had no idea I was falling for a phony dream. The first indication that something was wrong occurred roughly 6 months later. Jacob still had no employment. He claimed he was looking, but in reality, he had been staying up all night playing video games and blaming the system. Henry left the house early every morning, talking about a job, but no money ever arrived. Bills were not being paid. There was less food at home. When I mentioned it, my mother would tilt her head and remark, "Well, Edward, you have a great job. You can take care of it, right?" I tried to remain cool. I kept thinking it was only for now. That they will find employment shortly. I had to wait a little longer. However, I began to feel more like a cash machine with a bed than a person who owned the house. Worse, they pretended to own the house. Jacob was frequently hosting gatherings. Henry replaced the locks without telling me. My mother rearranged things in my office while I was away for business, transforming it into her reading nook. I almost lost control when I watched her peruse my letters to see if there was anything important. Still, I kept quiet. I'd started seeing a therapist, and they advised me to establish clear boundaries. So, I did. I printed out a document outlining our spending, highlighting what I paid for, and what they did not. I urged them to begin assisting. Not a lot, just a few hundred every month. They acted as if I had asked for something excessive. "We're your family," my mother explained, as if that meant they didn't have to pay anything. "I know," I said. "That's exactly why I let it go on for this long." Jacob rolled his eyes and muttered under his breath that I cared too much about money. Henry did not even come over to join the conversation. After that, the mood changed. Awkward, frigid, and filled with hushed tension. Jacob ceased saying anything unless his internet was down. My mother continued to cook, but there was no longer enough food for me. When I left, they started having private conversations, and when I returned, the house felt different. Furniture in new locations. Tasks were reassigned. New rules, such as no shoes in the lounge, seemed to apply just to me. The true sting struck in November. I had been swamped with work and was looking forward to the holidays. My work had been exhausting, and all I wanted for Christmas was calm. I had even purchased a tree, some basic lights, and a wreath for the entrance. I set everything up on Saturday morning while they were gone. That evening they came home and glanced around the living room as if I had committed a crime. "Why didn't you check with us first?" my mother inquired, arms folded, and stared at the tree as if it had personally insulted her. "I thought we were celebrating together," I explained, perplexed. "We chose not to celebrate Christmas this year," Jacob said. "It's a waste of cash." "We made that decision," Mom explained. "Nobody mentioned it to me," I replied. "Well, maybe if you were here more often," she replied, "you'd be aware of what's going on." A deep, hollow silence enveloped my chest. I just stood there, watching the twinkling lights behind her. The way she spoke made me feel out of place, like if my exhilaration had intruded and damaged their space. But I kept it inside. I removed the decorations, took down the wreath, and told myself it wasn't worth fighting over. I even convinced myself that maybe next year will be better. Then this week arrived. When I arrived home after a work trip, I found the living room decorated with lights, stockings on the mantel, and holiday music playing in the background. They were decorating the tree and laughing together. I stopped at the doorway for a second, wondering if it was a surprise for me. But I heard my mother say, "It's so peaceful not having Edward here to ruin everything." I froze. I did not know what to say. When I entered the room, the laughter stopped. "Oh," my mother responded without emotion. "You're back earlier than we thought." "I guess I missed the message about not doing Christmas again," I answered, maintaining my voice level. She did not blink. She looked directly at me and said, "We're not including you in Christmas this year." Just like that. I'm not sure what she wanted me to do: yell, cry, or ask to participate. I did not accomplish anything. I merely nodded, walked into the kitchen, took out my laptop, and entered into my mortgage account, while they continued to hang decorations on the tree that I was not allowed to touch. I selected the option to remove myself as a co-borrower, and when the machine asked if I was sure, I clicked yes without thinking twice. However, that was not the end of the chapter. Because once they realized what I had done and what it signified, the faux friendliness vanished quickly. That's when everything truly got out of control. 3 days later, I was eating lunch in my office when my phone started vibrating nonstop. First, Mom sent a message. "Edward, what did you do with the mortgage?" Another one in full caps. "Stop being ridiculous, this isn't funny." I didn't answer immediately. I simply stared at the screen. The words seemed hazy, like if my head was dragging. I expected them to catch on eventually, but not this quickly. I assumed I would have at least a couple more days. To be honest, I didn't expect them to care that much. It turns out they did. My mother tried calling. I let it ring. She called again. I also overlooked that. She eventually left a voicemail. I wasn't sure what to expect. Perhaps an apology. Nope. "Edward, this is cruel. The house is supposed to belong to all of us. It's not something you can use to hurt us. I didn't raise you to be this way. Call me back." The concluding line, "I didn't raise you to be this way," made me laugh out loud. The irony could have spread like butter. When I walked inside that night, it felt unusually still, far too silent. Usually Jacob would be ranting at his console while Henry would be faking repairs elsewhere. What about now? Just silent. The quiet hum of the fridge filled the air, as did the smell of charred food from the kitchen. Most likely one of Henry's bizarre supper preparations gone awry. I strolled in as usual, set my keys on the shelf, and kicked off my sneakers. I hadn't expected an attack in the living room, but all three of them, Mom, Henry, and Jacob, were lined up on the couch like a panel of judges. "You have to undo what you did," Mom murmured, her gaze avoiding mine. "Hey there, Mom, it's great to be back," I said, tossing my laptop case beside the steps. "Quit pretending," Jacob yelled. "You messed with the property stuff. That's against the law." I raised an eyebrow. "Against the law? You mean changing ownership of the place I paid for?" "It doesn't only belong to you," Mom snarled. "We've stayed here. We made it our home." "You've been living here rent-free," I said back. "That's not the same thing." Henry eventually spoke quietly. "You're doing the wrong thing, kid." "I'm not your child," I said without thinking. Silence struck the room like a punch. That remark landed hard. Henry averted his gaze, and something in Mom's face shifted. Not agony, not sorrow, just blank, as if she had been wearing that artificial look for so long that she had forgotten it was fake. "We gave you," she began, her voice quiet. Something inside me sprang open. "Oh, you mean the part where you duped me into paying for your house by making me the family's target? Or how about the time you hosted a party but didn't invite me, despite the fact that I live here? What memory are we talking about?" "Stop being over the top," she mumbled as usual. As if that sentence could remove any harsh reality. I walked to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and grabbed some cold water. My hands were shaking slightly, Not from fear but from a different type of energy. It was sharp, controlled, and decisive. Something had changed within me that could not be undone. You know? I murmured, leaning on the counter. I used to think it was me. That if I worked harder, paid more, kept quiet, I'd finally belong here. Edward, Mom said, her voice too sweet and phony. But now I understand, I interrupted her. You don't want a son. You want someone to pay the bills and never ask questions. That's not who I am anymore. I sipped and glanced at each of them. Jacob's face was flushed, his leg jumping like a scared child. Henry seemed completely blank, like if he had given up years ago. And Mom. She appeared to be about to say something harsh, but couldn't find the words. So I completed it for her. I already talked to a lawyer, I replied. Technically you're just residents here, but since there's no lease agreement you've got 30 days to leave. Not one word. Only quietness. You're really kicking out your own mother? She inquired, her voice wavering slightly. After all I've done for you? You stopped acting like a parent the second you turned me into your bank account. The hush in the room was heavy. Even the couch appeared to hold its breath. Then Jacob sprang up quickly, hitting the table with his knee. This is nuts. You can't do this. I can, I answered calmly. And I'm going to. I turned and went upstairs, prepared to lock my door and let them deal with it. But as I got to the top, I heard her voice again. You think you're the good guy, she cried. But this won't be forgotten. Family remembers. I paused for a second, turning back enough for her to hear but not see me. Good, I said. I hope you remember every bit of it. I shut my door and sat at my desk, inhaling carefully. The silence was not serene. It seemed tight, like the sky before a storm. Because I knew this wasn't the end, and they were going to fight even harder than before. The next day began with an uncomfortable silence. It felt weird, not peaceful, more like the unsettling silence that lingers after a major battle, where even minor noises seem louder than usual. I could hear someone moving downstairs, clinking plates slightly too loudly, as if they were attempting to be passive-aggressive over breakfast. I didn't bother going downstairs. I was not prepared for another round, and I knew they weren't either. Not yet. However, the silence was only a prelude to the main action. By that evening, the real pushback had started. My mother started it by putting a piece of paper under my bedroom door. Yes, a genuine handwritten letter in immaculate script. 3 whole pages written on her fancy note card, which she usually saved for birthdays. The first line read, I'm speaking as a mother who deeply cares about her son, not someone trying to control him. Sure. The entire letter was a huge guilt trap. She wrote about what she had given up for me. She worked 2 jobs when my father walked out. How she never complained. She did, however. She even mentioned how I used to cry whenever I scraped my knee, and how she was always there to soothe me. Then came the emotional weight. She described how heartbreaking it was to see the family break down, regarding how my behavior was tearing us apart, about how money had turned me cold and distant. The last line, I just want my son back. Please don't go through with this. I finished reading with a tight feeling in my chest, not because I believed any of it, but because a part of me still wishes I could. That was always the way it was with my mother. She did not raise me with kindness. She used pressure to raise me. And that type of upbringing is difficult to shake. I did not respond. The next morning, things worsened. Henry noticed me walking out of my room and stood in the corridor like a cheap security guard. You know, he remarked, arms folded. This house doesn't just belong to you. We've done a lot around here. I blinked at him. You changed a bulb last month. He did not like that. His jaw stiffened. This isn't how families act. No, I answered, walking past him. But that's exactly how a landlord deals with non-payers. Later that day, I realized the thermostat had been locked. My mother abruptly declared that the upstairs restroom was off limits. The laundry times were rearranged at random without my knowledge. Childish. Immature. But it did not end there. That night, I discovered Jacob sitting in my office, using my computer. He was sitting in my chair, browsing through my open tabs as if everything was normal. What are you doing? I inquired, lowering my tone. He looked up slowly as though I was upsetting him. Chill out, he said. I'm just looking at something. You always act like everything is yours. It is mine, I said firmly. Yeah, he replied as he stood up, his voice falling. Maybe it's time you stopped pretending you're above everyone. You're not better than us, Edward. I didn't respond. Then he added, one day you're going to be the one begging for support, and when that day comes, I hope we remind you of this. It was almost comical that I needed their assistance. I wanted to laugh. But instead, I simply closed the door and turned the lock. That night I began putting a chair under the doorway when I went to bed. I wish I could say it was simply nervousness, but the next morning, I discovered scratch marks on the doorframe near the lock, as if someone had attempted to force it open. That's when I stopped trying to be pleasant. I started keeping records, I took pictures, saved messages. I set up a hallway camera directed directly at my door. I printed the state's tenant statutes and marked every provision that enabled me to legally evict them. And I began preparing, not simply to get them out, but to leave myself. Because even if they were gone, the home would remain heavy. A place full of old battles and tensions that I could not forget. 2 days later, the finish line was crossed. I got home from work, walked into the kitchen, and froze. They had gone into my refrigerator. Everything on the shelf where I stored my personal food, my leftovers, yogurt, Thai recipes I enjoyed, had been spilled. Everything is in the trash. The shelf was empty. A note was affixed to the refrigerator door. One word. Community. No name. There's no explanation. Just that. I did not shout. I did not stomp around the house yelling. I went upstairs, opened my laptop, typed out a proper eviction notice, printed a physical copy, and slipped it under the door to the living room, where they were watching some rubbish TV show. Roughly. 5 minutes later I heard Jacob exclaim, "What the heck is this?" I didn't answer him that night, but I knew they would show up eventually. They didn't come alone. That is when the next stage of their story began. This time, they brought in the entire family. The night I handed them the official eviction notice, I felt peace was out of reach. They were not about to leave quietly. That was just not their style. What surprised me was how much effort they put into spinning the story. It began with Aunt Linda. She called me the next morning, her voice full of artificial friendliness, as if she'd already chosen her team but was pretending not to. "Edward, honey, I heard there's been some trouble at home. Your mom's really hurting," she told him. "I heard you're throwing them out." I exhaled. "Linda, they've lived in my house without paying a single dollar for nearly 4 years. They haven't helped with anything. I'm simply asking them to finally step up." She hesitated and said, "I just don't think that's very Christian of you, especially during the holidays." And there it was, the guilt strategy. The normal family technique is to make me feel like the evil guy while entirely rewriting what's going on. Over the next few days, I received messages from 3 cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. 2 people pretended to be casually checking in. Someone sent me a Bible quotation with a sardonic twist. Even my grandmother, who hadn't been fully cognizant for the previous 2 Thanksgiving feasts, managed to leave a voice message that said, "Edward, don't hurt your poor mom like this, You'd think I'd be angry. Instead, I felt clear-headed, as if a veil had cleared and everything made sense. This was the game. The structure. An emotional swindle in which my mother was the boss and fed her version of reality to everyone else. And I was finished playing along. I stopped responding to texts. I went to work, came home, took notes on what had transpired, and waited. The 30 days were passing away, and each week the house became colder, both in feel and temperature. Mom abruptly forgot to use the heat. Jacob hammered on the doors. Henry sulked around. The entire atmosphere was filled with unspoken anxiety. I kept out of it. I kept to myself. I slept with my door locked. I made my own food. Waited. 3 days before the deadline, I prepared a Facebook post that was calm, direct, and honest. No name calling. There was no shouting. "Hello everyone. I'd like to clear up some confusion. Years ago I consented to live with my mother, stepfather, and brother. I made the entire down payment on the home, and have subsequently paid 95% of the total costs. Despite multiple attempts to establish shared accountability, I've been treated with manipulation and quiet harassment. After being excluded from family functions within the home I paid for, and having my boundaries repeatedly violated, I made the legal decision to serve them a notice to vacate. This was not done for retribution, but because I value my tranquility. I wish them no harm, but I will no longer risk my sanity to defend someone else's idea of family. Then I logged out. That post did more than just cease the guilt tripping. It absolutely shut it down. A few people attempted to keep the drama going, but most gave up after I presented substantial evidence, messages, emails, and photos of what had been broken. I did not insult anyone. I did not reveal all the details. I did not need to. The reality was more than sufficient. When the day came for them to leave, I didn't grin, did not gloat, didn't say anything. A friend brought over his pickup, and I used it to transport their belongings, what little was worth taking, to the front yard. I boxed everything all up on my own, tagged everything, and kept it calm. Jacob stepped outside and shouted something about me betraying the family, but I did not respond. Henry remained silent, his gaze fixed downward. Mom glanced at me, not with wrath or grief. She looked surprised, as if she actually believed I'd back out at the last moment. But I did not. They drove away in the middle of the day. No goodbyes, no hugs, no words. As they drove away, all I could hear was the crunching of their tires on the driveway. When their automobile had left, I closed the door, locked it, and stood there. The silence in the house was unlike anything else. There was no hammering from upstairs. There is no video game noise that shakes the walls. No emotional tactics. There is no guilt. It's just me. And for the first time in years, I felt something genuine. Stillness that felt wonderful. In the weeks that followed, I deep cleaned the house, painted the walls, changed the door locks, repurposed my office as a workplace, and transformed the additional room into a music room, just as I'd always desired. I even put the Christmas decorations back up, because I wanted to. I brought several pals around for the first time in years. We played board games, watched stupid movies on the backyard projector, and laughed more in 1 month than I had in the previous many years. And I finally slept soundly, better than I had in a decade. I still get messages from family members urging me to make things right. But I disregard it. I'm not holding a grudge. I'm not upset. I've just finished. Because true vengeance does not involve fury. It means choosing a better life. Draw a line. Choosing peace rather than pretending. That is how you win. So, she said. We're not doing Christmas with you this year, I quietly responded. That's fine. And now I spend the occasion in my own unique way, with genuine joy, authentic music, and genuine caring. There was no bitter gaze or phony smile in sight. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. After 12 years building my father's company to $75 million, he gave it to my brother. Did they really think I'd just accept that? After 12 years of operating my father's company, I finally increased its value to $75 million. At a family supper, my father glanced at me and smiled. Your brother will take over now. My heart dropped, but I smiled back. The following morning at work, everything changed. I vividly remember my father's smile that night, his hand resting proudly on my brother's shoulder, as if he had already made up his mind before saying the words that would change everything. Your brother will take over now. I felt my stomach plummet, but years of skill kept my expression calm. I smiled back, like if his words hadn't pierced right through me, unraveling 12 years of my life's work in an instant. The dining room was alive with the clinking of glasses and the gentle hum of talks among extended relatives and close business associates. This was more than just a family dinner. It was a celebration. A minute to honor everything we had built. Everything I'd built. My father founded Harper & Company when I was a child, a small logistics company that struggled to stay alive during its early years. I grew up watching my father fight to keep things going, working late hours, forgoing family holidays, and always pursuing the next contract to make ends meet. When I was 24, fresh out of business school, he eventually let me in. Though I had to fight for the opportunity. And I had done more than simply step in. Harper & Company had grown from a struggling regional logistics concern to a nationwide powerhouse under my leadership, with operations expanded, million-dollar contracts secured, and cutting-edge technology integrated. What was once a small, virtually bankrupt company has grown into an industry leader valued at $75 million. But, at this moment, none of it mattered. My father had already made the decision. My brother Ethan would take over. Not me? A gentle wave of approval rippled over the table, with murmurs of congratulations directed toward Ethan. I watched as he lowered his gaze, pretending modesty. Though I knew better. Ethan had never completely invested in the firm. He'd spent the last decade jumping from one failed business to the next, never quite finding his feet. He was not interested in logistics. He was not interested in operations. However, he was interested in power. I'd spent 12 years proving myself, starting Harper & Company from the bottom up, making every difficult decision, late-night strategy call, and contract negotiation. Ethan hadn't done any of it. And yet here we were. Nonetheless, I swallowed my emotions. I'd learned a long time ago that exhibiting pain was considered a weakness in this household. I reached for my wine glass and steadied my hand before lifting it. Lisa? Smile. Smile. To Ethan, I replied, my voice smooth and controlled. The visitors raised their glasses, unaware of the tempest developing behind my eyes. My mother looked at me from across the table, an unreadable expression on her face. But I knew she understood. Unlike my father, Mom had always recognized the effort I put in. But she refused to interfere. She never did. Then there was my father, smiling with the same unflinching assurance, fully oblivious that his decision had put something in motion. Ethan met my eyes from across the table, a smirk barely visible on the corner of his lips. That was the moment I knew. This was not solely my father's decision. Ethan had waited for this. He had carefully positioned himself, portraying the loyal son who had finally discovered his purpose. My father, a staunch conservative, saw no problem in his rationale. The kingdom should be passed down from father to son. A daughter's efforts were always viewed as temporary, a footnote in history, no matter how hard she worked to show different. But what they didn't realize, and none of them had considered, was that I had spent the previous 12 years not only developing a company, but also consolidating my position inside it. And the next morning, they'd figure out what that meant. That night, I hardly slept. My thoughts replayed every sacrifice I'd made for Harper & Company, late nights, missed birthdays, and relationships strained under the weight of my desire. I had given everything to this company. And now they expect me to just step aside? They'd underestimated me. By 3 a.m., I was in my home office, typing furiously on my keyboard. Each contract, every share, all executive agreements. Nobody knew how this company worked better than I did. Ethan expected a smooth transition, that by next week, his name would be on the office door, and his employment would be guaranteed. What he didn't realize was that while my father was busy making public appearances and my brother was busy pretending to understand the business, I had secured something much more valuable. Control. I entered Harper & Company headquarters at exactly 8:45 a.m., as I had done for the previous 12 years. The same walls. The same polished floors. The same hum of efficiency persisted as staff settled into their routines. But today was different. Today, I didn't walk into my office, I was walking into a battleground. The reception area was unusually quiet, the type of silence that comes before a storm. They knew. The whispers had already begun. The story of my father's declaration during dinner had circulated quickly. Employees looked at me with uncomfortable looks, avoiding direct eye contact, unsure where their loyalty should rest. I did not acknowledge them. I strolled confidently, my heels tapping on the marble flooring, my stance solid. Never show them you are disturbed. I entered my office. Shutting the door behind me, I had exactly 15 minutes until my father and Ethan arrived, expecting them to take over as CEO and heir apparent respectively. 15 minutes before their entire strategy disintegrated in front of them. I sat at my desk, inhaled deeply, and then turned on my computer. The screen displayed a list of sensitive documents and contracts that they had never considered looking at and assumed did not matter. I opened my ownership records, lingering my hands over the keyboard for a moment before clicking on the file labeled, Executive Shareholder Agreement. And then I waited. A strong knock on my door came at precisely 9 a.m. I did not bother answering. The door opened, and my father and Ethan strolled in, both exuding confidence. His, inborn. Ethan's, carefully crafted. My father walked in like a monarch surveying his realm, and Ethan, dressed in an expensive navy suit, flashed me a smug, triumphant grin. It took everything I had not to laugh. My father said, "Lisa," in his customary forceful tone, as if acknowledging me was a favor. "I assume you're aware of the transition happening today?" Transition. Interesting wording. I'm aware, I replied easily, reclining back in my chair. I looked at Ethan, whose smirk became wider. Good, my father said, nodding as if we all agreed. Ethan will be stepping in as the new CEO. We'll need you to help with the handover, get him familiar with the operations before you officially move on. I raised an eyebrow. Move on? I repeated, faking ignorance. Dad, I think you're mistaken about something. His face twitched with annoyance. He was used to my silent cooperation and ability to follow instructions. He was unprepared for this. Lisa, he murmured, his voice tight, like if addressing a child. This isn't up for debate, we've already made the decision. I smiled, a slow, knowing smile. Oh, I know, Dad, I answered softly. The thing is, you don't have the authority to make that decision. Ethan scoffs quietly and shakes his head. Lisa, don't make this difficult, we're trying to do this the easy way. I did not respond. Instead, I went for my remote and clicked a button. The enormous screen on my office wall displayed a document that I had been examining earlier. Executive Shareholders Agreement signed on August 17, 2015. Signatories, Lisa Harper, James Harper, father, and Ethan Harper. My father's face paled somewhat. I turned to Ethan. Do you even know what this document is? He crossed his arms and shifted in discomfort. A shareholders agreement? He wondered. I nodded. Yes. And do you know what it says? I tapped the screen to highlight an important clause. This document was drafted when Harper & Company was restructuring. It clearly states that any transfer of executive power, such as appointing a new CEO, requires the approval of all majority shareholders. I caught my father's gaze. And I, Dad, hold 60% of the company's shares. The hush that followed was smothering. My father's expression darkened. That's impossible, Ethan whispered as he moved forward to examine the page. Actually, it's very possible, I replied calmly. You see, over the years, while you were busy failing at every startup you touched, and Dad was busy playing the role of business patriarch, I was doing something else. I leaned forwards. I was securing my place. I turned back to face my father. Remember when you needed capital for expansion in 2017? You agreed to give me an additional 15% of your shares in exchange for my investment. And in 2019, when we had that court dispute, another 10% was transferred under my name as collateral, which you never bothered to reclaim. That, plus my original 35%, gives me the controlling stake. My dad's jaw clenched. But, Ethan was in a panic. You have to be bluffing, he exclaimed. I took out a second document. This is the most recent legal filing with the state. Want to verify? Ethan took the paper and scanned it, his face losing color with every passing second. You can't do it, he muttered. Dad, tell her she can't do this? My father stayed silent. Because he knew. I had lawfully outmaneuvered him. And he couldn't do anything about it. I sighed softly and stood up. I'm not firing you, Ethan, I explained. I don't want to force you into the real job market, but you will report to me and work under my guidance. Otherwise? I motioned to the door. You're free to leave. Ethan looked at my father, his eyes begging, but for the first time in his life, my father had no response. There was no way to fix it, because it wasn't his company anymore. That was my. The silence in my workplace felt oppressive. Ethan still held the official document in his hand, his fingers white from holding it too firmly. My father remained motionless beside him, his expression unreadable. But I knew better. He was calculating, trying to figure a way out of this. There was not one. I had spent years preparing for this moment, not because I expected treachery, but because experience had taught me never to presume loyalty in situations of authority. For the first time in my life, my father didn't recognize me. Maybe he never had. Is that it? Ethan eventually spoke, his voice tinged with resentment. Are you just taking everything? I laughed softly, without humor. Are you taking everything? I repeated, moving closer to him. Ethan, I created this company from nothing. I made every contract, expansion, and innovation a reality. While you were busy failing above, I was keeping this company running. So no, I am not taking anything. I leaned in slightly. I'm just keeping what's already mine. Ethan's face contorted in rage, but he had no response. He knew I was correct. And worse, so did my father. He had spent years believing that bloodline was more important than skill. That his son would receive what was properly mine. He'd underestimated me. And now he had to pay for his folly. My father eventually ended the hush. You're making a mistake, Lisa. His voice was calm and calculated, But I could sense the pressure underlying. Families should stick together. Do you truly want to end this relationship? I met his eyes unflinchingly. Dad, I said. You burned this bridge the moment you made your decision without me. His lips form a thin line. Business is larger than one person. We can develop a solution that benefits everyone. I cocked my head slightly, simulating interest. Oh, I agree. I let the words hang in the air before proceeding. That's why I'm offering you both a choice. I went to Ethan first. You can stay with the company, I added, keeping my voice smooth and professional. But you will not be CEO. You will serve as an advisor with limited authority. Your compensation will be generous, but you will report to me. Ethan stiffened, but I did not stop. Or, I added, you can walk away. I will acquire your shares at market value. You can take the money and start working on a new project. My dad scoffed. You're acting like you hold all the cards. I smiled. I do. My words were followed by a dense hush. I let them sit in it, let them experience what it was like to be powerless. Finally, my father breathed, shaking his head in astonishment. I never thought you'd do this, he grumbled. Not to your own family. At his comments, I felt a searing pang. Not for your own family. I wanted to tell him he was the one who did it. That he chose to cast me aside, as if I were only temporary. But I did not. In the end, it didn't matter. What was important was that I would not let them remove what I had built. Not now. Not ever. Ethan was the first to storm out. Good riddance. I knew my brother well enough to anticipate his next action. He would approach our relatives and family acquaintances, presenting himself as a victim of corporate deception. I didn't care. I was not here to win their approval. I came here to win my future. My father waited for a while longer, as if expecting me to alter my mind. When I didn't respond, he nodded slowly. You've changed, he stated gently. I met his gaze. No, Dad. I just finally stopped pretending. Then he departed. I breathed and returned to my chair. I should have felt victorious. I had fought for my position, and won. But as I glanced at the vacant doorway, I sensed something else. A soft, lingering aching. A part of me had always wished for my father's approval. Some small, desperate part of me believed that if I worked hard enough and proved myself repeatedly, he would eventually see me. But he never truly looked. So now he had no choice but to see me for who I truly was. Not his daughter, not his temporary replacement. The genuine boss of Harper & Company. I returned to my computer, my attention changing. I had spent 12 years creating this business. Now I'd spend the next 12 years making it untouchable. My father and brother attempted to take everything from me. But in the end, they were the ones who had lost everything. For the first time in 12 years, my workplace felt empty. There were no phone calls from my father. Ethan sent no passive-aggressive emails, just silence. But silence did not indicate serenity. It meant the struggle had started. I knew my father wouldn't leave peacefully. And Ethan? He would fight tooth and nail to restore what he believed was his birthright. I wasn't naive enough to believe this was over. It had just begun. By the next morning, I could detect an undercurrent of discomfort in the company. Employees who had greeted me with confidence last week now appeared nervous. As if they were terrified to choose a side. Several department heads avoided eye contact. I knew exactly what was going on. My father and Ethan were using the Whisper network. Old family pals, board members, senior executives. They were spreading doubts, painting myself as frigid, ruthless, disloyal. Ethan, in particular, had taken on the character of the wounded son, betrayed by his sister. I could see him now, seated in a high-end restaurant, pretending to be sorry as he told our investors how I had taken the firm from him. And what about my father? He would not need to say much at all. Just a deep sigh. A shaky head. The neatly arranged words. I only ever wanted the best for my children. It was calculated. And risky. Because, if they could turn my board members and senior executives against me, they may force me out of my own company. At the very least, make my leadership impossible. I wasn't going to let that happen. That afternoon, I scheduled an emergency executive meeting. As I entered the boardroom, I could feel the tension in the air. Half of the room averted my gaze. The other half observed me too closely, waiting for me to slip. I took a seat at the head of the table. My seat. Let's not waste time, I added, my tone steady. I know there have been conversations, behind closed doors, over drinks, in hushed voices. I let my gaze sweep the room, pausing on each individual just long enough to cause them to squirm uncomfortably. I'm also aware that some of you are asking if my leadership is sustainable. Several folks tensed. Nobody spoke. I tapped my fingers on the polished wooden table. Let's clear that up now. I displayed a presentation on the screen behind me. Numbers, data, facts. I transformed this company from a struggling regional business to a $75 million industry leader. Under my leadership, we've increased sales by 300% over the last 5 years and entered 6 new markets. I turned to the CFO. Paul, do we have a single financial indicator suggesting this company is in trouble under my leadership? Paul hesitated before shaking his head. In fact, projections show another 20% growth in the next quarter. I nodded. So let's be honest about what's happening here. I leaned forwards. My father and brother are not unhappy because the business is faltering. They are not upset because I am failing to lead. They are furious because they expected me to step aside and let Ethan take over. Regardless of qualification. Regardless of the outcome. The room was silent. Then I dropped the true bombshell. I also know that some of you have been contacted in the last 24 hours, offered incentives to push for my resignation. I tilted my head slightly. If anyone here would like to disclose those conversations now, this is your chance. Several folks shuffled uncomfortably. Then, after a lengthy period, one of the senior executives cleared his throat. I received a call, he said. From your father. He said he was considering making an official appeal to the board. I nodded, not surprised. And did he offer anything in return for your support? A pause. Then, a slow nod. There it is. I breathed and stood up. My father built this company, I replied. I will not dispute that. But I went further than he could have. And I will not let him manage it from the outside. I let my voice drop slightly, controlled and threatening. If he wants a fight, he'll get one. I gathered my papers and looked each executive in the eyes. If anyone here believes my father and brother deserve control, now is the time to make your move. Silence. Nobody moved. Good. I turned and went away, head held high. It wasn't just about keeping my company. This was to ensure that they never imagined they could take it from me again. That night, I made my own call. Not to any board member, not for an investor. But what about the media? By morning, the business section of every major news outlet featured the following headline. Power shift at Harper & Co. Lisa Harper outmaneuvers family in boardroom battle. I'd made my move. Now it was their turn. And I waited. My inbox burst the morning after my story went to publication. Emails. I missed calls. Messages from reporters, investors, and board members. Some were supportive. Some were cautious. However, most of them had one question in common. Is it true? I let them wait. I knew what game my father was playing. He had spent decades mastering the art of public perception. He understood that reputation was important in business. If he couldn't beat me in the boardroom, he would undercut me in public. And that was exactly what he was attempting to do. By lunchtime, the first counterattack had arrived. A press release is nicely made, precisely phrased, but full of lies. Harper & Company has always been a family-owned business. We are disappointed by recent occurrences, but we remain dedicated to sustaining the ideals that have driven this organization. Changes in leadership are unavoidable, and we expect to transition seamlessly as we move forward. It was subtle. But I knew what it was actually saying. Lisa is irresponsible. Lisa is unstable. Lisa isn't a team player. I was not surprised. I was, however, incensed. I sat in my office, watching the news as industry analysts argued over my leadership. Was Lisa Harper too aggressive in her takeover? Will her lack of cooperation hurt the company in the long run? Can she recover from this PR disaster? They spoke as if I wasn't watching. As if I hadn't already planned my next move. Because if my father and Ethan desired a public conflict, I was planning to give them one. I did not release a statement. I did not call a press conference. Instead, I placed one phone call. To an old buddy in investigative journalism. I have something for you, I explained. But you'll need to move fast. An hour later, I emailed over documents. Emails. Financial reporting. Internal records. Evidence. Harper & Company, under my father's guidance, had engaged in unethical business activities throughout time. I had spent the previous decade quietly cleaning up. The news broke within 24 hours. Behind the scenes at Harper & Company, a legacy of hidden debts and financial cover-ups. The piece was brutal. It applauded my leadership for improving the company's financial situation. It was critical of my father's mismanagement, but most importantly, it proved that I was the sole reason Harper and Company had survived. Just like that. The narrative changed. The board has stopped doubting me. The investors stopped hesitating. And what about my father? He had nowhere to hide. 2 days later, my father finally contacted me. I let the phone ring 3 times before answering. "Lisa," he murmured in a tense voice. "We need to talk." I slumped back in my chair. "Do we?" Silence. Finally, a sigh. "You didn't have to do that." I gave a tiny laugh. "Neither did you?" "This company was supposed to be a legacy," he told me. "For the family. For both of you." I had a familiar pain. A small, naive part of me had once desired that. But not anymore. "Dad," I spoke gently. "If you wanted me to safeguard the legacy, you should have trusted me with it. Instead, you attempted to steal it from me." Another prolonged stillness. He asked, almost reluctantly, "What happens now?" I breathed slowly. Now, I'm going to make sure you never touch my company again." The conflict was over. My father had lost. Ethan had vanished. And I'd won. However, when I sat in my office, staring out at the metropolitan skyline, I felt no happiness. No victory. Just emptiness. I had spent the last 12 years fighting for Harper and Company, building it, safeguarding it, and making it stronger than ever. Nonetheless, the cost of that win outweighed my expectations. Because I had secured my position, I had misplaced something else along the road. My family. The next day, I came into the office as if nothing had happened. But everybody knew the truth. The whispers had ended. The doubt had dissipated. I was no longer simply Lisa Harper, CEO. I was Lisa Harper, the lady who outmaneuvered her father and brother and emerged victorious. Some people appreciated me for it. Some scared me because of it. And some were still waiting for me to fall. I let them wait. At midday, my father and I convened in the conference room for our final conversation. He seemed exhausted. Older, as if the weight of what had happened had finally fallen on his shoulders. I waited for him to speak first. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "I'm retiring," he announced simply. "Effective immediately." I did not react. I had anticipated this. "I'll sell my remaining shares," he added. "I'll keep a small percentage as an investor, but I won't be involved anymore." I examined him attentively. "And Ethan?" His jaw stiffened. "He's gone," my father admits. "Took the buyout? He won't be back." A part of me knew it would end like this. Ethan had never been strong enough to face his own difficulties. When he realized he had lost, he did what he always did. Run. Still, hearing it out made something inside me ache. No regret. Not guilty. Simply the finality of it all. I nodded. Understood. My father exhaled and rubbed his temples, as if he had a headache. Then, after a long gap, he said something unexpected. "I underestimated you." It was not an apology, but it was as close as I'd ever come. And strangely, I realized I didn't need it anymore. A month later, Harper and Company looked nothing like it did previously. Who were the previous board members who supported my father and Ethan? Gone. What about the executives who had questioned my leadership? Replaced? The company had always performed well under my leadership. But now, it was absolutely mine. And with that control comes a new perspective. I introduced proposals that my father had consistently rejected. He has described modernized systems as unnecessary. He ventured into industries that he had previously avoided. Within 6 months, profits skyrocketed. Within a year, we had reached the $100 million milestone. For the first time in my life, I wasn't battling solely to prove myself. I was fighting to create something that no one could take from me again. A year later, I met my father for dinner. It was the first time we had talked since his retirement. He looked different. Quieter. He wasn't angry now. Simply accepting. "I read about the latest deal you closed," he continued as he drank. "It was a smart move." I smirked faintly. "I know." A shadow of a smile appeared on his lips. There was no longer tension between us. There is no war left to fight. Just the simple, undeniable truth. He'd tried to push me aside. And I had proven him incorrect. He lifted his glass. "To Harper and Company," he stated. This time, as I clinked my glass with his, I did not feel angry. I didn't feel resentful. Only tranquility. Because I'd already won. And I no longer needed his permission to know it. As I sit in my office now, overlooking the city where I built my empire, I reflect on the lessons this trip has taught me. That family might be your greatest adversary. Loyalty is a currency, not a promise. That power is never given. It's taken. But more importantly, sometimes, the finest method to prove your worth is to quit seeking validation and create something so powerful that they can never ignore you again. I don't have any regrets. Harper & Company are now mine. And I aim to make sure that no one forgets it. I was ignored by my family, overshadowed by my mom's favoritism. No matter how hard I tried, I was always blamed for my sister's mistakes. I was never a favorite. That was my sister, the golden child. The person who could do no wrong, no matter how vicious she was or how much she got away with. My mother adored her. And me? I was just there. An afterthought. A shadow in my own house. It's always been this way. Growing up, I immediately realized that my opinions did not matter. My dreams were unimportant. My feelings? Either disregarded or mocked. My sister failed a test because I distracted her. When she lost a buddy, I was very likely the cause. When she broke something, I must have pushed her. And my mother? She believed her. Every single time. I strived to be a perfect daughter. I worked hard. Received good grades. I remained silent as they insulted me. I never acted out. Never fought back. I hoped that if I demonstrated my worth, they would eventually love me as much as they loved her. However, nothing changed. And suddenly everything came crumbling down. It began with an argument. Well, they were arguing. I was just standing there and letting them rant. My sister had failed a class and, rather than accepting responsibility, blamed me. Again. I didn't know how. Perhaps I stressed her out simply by being. "You've ruined our lives," she exclaimed. I barely had time to respond before my mother added, "We'd be happier without you." And that was it? The moment that left me broken. I did not cry. I did not yell. I did not beg them to take it back. I just nodded. Then I turned around, walked to my room, got a backpack, and packed whatever I could fit. They did not stop me. They did not even watch me depart. Just like that. I was gone. I stepped outside into the night, the weight of my backpack pressing against my shoulders. However, nothing compared to the heaviness in my chest. I walked without a destination. Simply putting distance between myself and the house I'd never fully called home. It was frigid. I recall that vividly. The air nipped at my skin, but I didn't shudder. I was numb. I had always imagined leaving would be spectacular, like in the movies. Maybe with tears rolling down my cheeks. Maybe with one final lingering look at the house I was leaving. However, there was none of it. No one pursued me. Nobody called my name. Nobody cared that I didn't know where to go. I had no plans. There's no safety net. My savings? Laughable. I had a few $100s put away from modest tutoring gigs. But I knew one thing for sure, I'd never go back. I chose a cheap motel for the night and paid for a single room with trembling hands. I glanced at the bed but couldn't make myself lie down. Instead, I sat at the small desk, the weak yellow light flickering above me, trying to decide what to do next. I did not have a degree. I didn't have any connections. I barely had any money. But I had one advantage. I'd spent my whole life being ignored. Underestimated. Nobody had ever handed me anything. If I was going to succeed, I'd have to create something from nothing. I began with what I knew. Studying. It sounded ludicrous at the time, but I was really excellent at it. I had spent years excelling in school, instructing other students, and assisting individuals with complicated subjects. Maybe, just maybe, I can make that into something. The next day, I went to a small cafe, ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu, and utilized the free Wi-Fi to apply for every online tutoring opportunity I could find. I kept my charges low, just enough to entice folks to notice me. Initially, it was just enough to get by. I lived on quick noodles and dollar store foods. I rented a room in a shared apartment with 3 strangers who barely knew I existed. However, it was still better than where I had come from. Because every day, I awoke knowing that no one would yell at me. Nobody would blame me for their failings. Nobody would say I was wrecking their life. And it was enough. The months have passed. My tutoring opportunities grew. 1 client became 3. 3 multiplied into 10. I soon made enough money to move into a tiny studio apartment that was scarcely larger than a box. But it was mine. Despite all of this, my family never phoned. Not once. Not on my birthday. Not on holidays. Not even to see if I was alive. It hurts, as old wounds do. Deep. Silent. Lingering. But I assured myself everything was good. If they did not care, neither did I. A year into my new existence, things began to alter. I had established a reputation as an instructor specializing in college entrance tests. Students from all throughout the country reached out, begging for assistance. However, I was still trading time for money. And I knew it wasn't sustainable. That's when I had an idea. What if I combined my lessons into something bigger? Something scalable? I spent several months researching digital marketing. Watching hours of free YouTube content. I read every article I could find. Then, I began designing my own online course. The ultimate SAT preparation guide. There was a risk. I spent every spare money I had on developing the course, creating a website, and running advertisements. Sales began slowly, one here and two there. Then something changed. Word of mouth spread. Students began raving about my approaches and shared them online. And, almost overnight, it burst. I awoke one morning to see that my sales had tripled. Then quadrupled. Within a few months, I was earning more than I had ever dreamed imaginable. I moved into a swanky high-rise apartment, the kind I used to fantasize about. I traveled. I met folks who genuinely respected me. Created friendships that were not based on obligation or blood. I'd done it. I'd created myself from nothing. And my family? They were nowhere to be found. Not a single message. Not a single call. They didn't care about me. Until this morning. My phone vibrated. I scarcely looked at it. Then I noticed the notifications. Mom has 6 missed calls. Sister has 8 missed calls. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. After all this time, they had made it apparent that they never wanted me. I let out a slow breath. I'd changed. I wasn't the helpless, needy girl they had kicked out of their life. I wasn't their punching bag anymore. Whatever they wanted, this was not supposed to be an apology. And I had no intention of making things easy for them. I sat there and stared at the screen. For what seemed like hours. But in actuality, it just took a few minutes. My thoughts raced. What could they want after all this time? Mom has never apologized for the way she treated me. She'd never revealed that she always picked my sister above me. And my sister? She hadn't even realized I was gone. Until now. But now. After all. They wanted me. I eventually decided to pick up. It was almost weird to hear her voice after so long. Hello? I asked, keeping my voice calm. Sweetie, please, we need to talk. Mom's voice quivered. Sweetie? After everything? She hadn't called me that in years. The phony compassion wounded. What's going on? I inquired, not masking my disbelief. There was a prolonged pause. We've fallen on hard times, Mom explained, her voice quivering. Your sister, she's been having trouble at school again, and with everything going on, we just don't have enough. She said with hesitation. We need your help. I bit my lip, a strange combination of satisfaction and wrath welling up inside me. Was this why they called me now? What kind of assistance? I inquired, keeping my voice calm. We need money, she said abruptly. Your sister's tuition, it's due. And we have bills we can't pay. I know we've never been there for you, but please. We're struggling. We need you to help us. We know it's a lot to ask, but please, we've tried everything. I could hear her sniffles. Perhaps it was genuine. Perhaps it was just guilt attempting to make its way back in. Please, she repeated. We need you back. We need your support. The words remained in the air. My support. They had been rejecting this assistance for years. I closed my eyes for a while, attempting to calm the flood of emotions that threatened to choke me. How could they think this was acceptable? For the first time in a long time, I felt more than apathy. It was hilarious. You're serious? I inquired, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. You really think I'll come back and help you? After everything? There was a gap followed by my mother's anxious cry. Please don't do this. We know we messed up, but we're your family. You can't just leave us like this. I clenched my fist. You never cared about me when I needed you, I replied, my voice shaking with restrained rage. You were too busy with your golden child. You let me disappear. You told me you'd be better off without me. I paused, feeling wrath well up in my chest. But I kept it in check. I was not going to let them know how deeply they had hurt me. I was not going to let them turn this around on me. I don't owe you anything, I said, My words as cutting as glass. Another prolonged delay. Then, why? My sister's voice rang out next, agitated and panicked. I know I was horrible to you. But I need your help. I messed up, okay? I didn't mean it. I've been trying to fix things, but I don't know what to do anymore. I nearly laughed. Fix things? How can you treat years of pain? I don't want your apologies, I replied bitterly. And I don't owe you my money or my help. You can figure it out, just like I did. But please, just... My sister's voice wavered, but I shut it off. Number. You should have thought about this before you kicked me out of your lives. I could feel my heart race as I hung up the phone. However, the adrenaline was not solely derived from rage. It stemmed from satisfaction. Knowing they needed me gave me a sense of satisfaction. After years of silence and pretending I did not exist, they needed me. I stood up and paced the room, allowing the gravity of the situation to set in. They were not calling to apologize. They weren't calling because they had missed me. They were phoning because they wanted me to remedy their mess. And while they struggled, they recognized what they had thrown away. But that didn't matter to me. They did not deserve me anymore. I was finished. But deep down, a part of me wanted to make them beg even longer. Make them uncomfortable. The phone vibrated again. I glanced at the screen. Mom, again. Her message carried the same desperate tone. Please. I know we can't undo the past, but we need you. I grinned. They had no idea what they were getting into. The phone vibrated again. The screen flashed with another message from my mother. Please, I'm begging you. We don't know where else to turn. I stared at the message, my finger hovering above the screen. Part of me wanted to dismiss it completely. Following all. Hadn't I previously answered them? But the desperation in her tone made me hesitate. For a time. Then I shook my head. Number, I was not going to soften. I was not going to be the one to improve their lives again. The thing is, I'd constructed something for myself. My empire, so to speak. My achievement wasn't solely about money. It was about the ability to choose who would be a part of my life. And my family? They no longer deserve that luxury. I put the phone down. I walked to the window. I looked out at the city. From this vantage point, everything seemed far away. So little. My former life's troubles felt like they belonged to someone else. I wasn't that person anymore. I was not their burden. Nevertheless, the messages kept pouring. I took a breath. I was not going to give in. I was not going to let them influence me with their guilt. But, deep down, there was a flare of something. Perhaps it was a pity. Perhaps curiosity. Perhaps something darker. But I resisted. The following morning, I awoke to the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. Again. A quick peek at the screen confirmed it was from my sister. This time, I paused. Should I bother reading this? But my thumb swiped across the screen before I could think about it any longer. The message came in. I know I can't change the past, but I've been trying so hard to get into college. They rejected me, and now Mom's saying that if we don't get the money for the retake, I'll never make it. Please. Please. I'm so sorry. I felt an unusual sensation. Not sympathetic, not guilty. But something made me halt. Was this genuine? Was my sister really begging me, or was she simply doing her part? I took a deep breath, my hand trembling as I typed my response. You never cared when I needed you. Why should I care now? I pressed send. The weight that settled in my chest felt heavier than I anticipated. A part of me felt cold and detached. I had built some protective armor over the years. But there's another part of me. It wanted to believe her. But I could not. I continued to work throughout the day. But, every time I looked at my phone, there were additional notifications. Calls. Texts. Voicemails. They were unrelenting. I could feel their desperation creeping through the screen and the words. They were beginning to disintegrate under the weight of their own decisions. But what did they expect of me? They'd made their bed. They'd picked their route. Now was the time for them to face the consequences. But then, at 7 p.m., I noticed something that made my heart skip a beat. A note from Mom. I need to talk to you. This isn't just about money. I know I messed up, we messed up. But I'm asking you, as a mother, to come home. I need you. We need you. Please don't leave us like this. I stared at the message. My thumb hovered above the keyboard. I briefly pondered calling her back. Perhaps I could hear her out. Maybe I can find a way to make this work. But then, I thought about what they had put me through. They treated me as if I did not matter. I was not going to forget that. I was not their savior. With a long exhale, I typed, "You had your chance. I'm done." I pressed send. And something within me cracked. I knew I'd made the proper decision. At the same time, I felt a lingering ache in my chest. Because deep inside, I couldn't help wondering. What if this was their final scream for help? What if they truly were suffering? But in the end, I learned one thing. I could not repair them. They were beyond rescuing. If they wanted anything from me, it needed to be on my terms. I put my phone down and attempted to forget about them. But the following evening, while I was sitting in my living room, going through my phone, I heard a knock on the door. A sharp and fast rap. There was a pause afterwards. I looked up, puzzled. Who might that be? I stood up and moved toward the door, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on edge. Something did not feel right. Looking through the peephole, my stomach sank. There they were. Mom. Dad. My sister. I am standing on my porch. They looked like they hadn't slept for days. Their faces were worn, drawn, and pale. But it wasn't only their appearance that made my pulse quicken. It was the fact that they had arrived here, uninvited. I hesitated for a time, unsure what to do. Part of me wished to ignore them, turn around and walk away, pretending I hadn't noticed them. But the wrath I had been suppressing surged up. I wasn't about to let them enter my space, not after all they had done. I opened the door just enough to see them clearly, my heart pounding in my chest. "What are you doing here?" I questioned, my voice low and angry. Mom stepped forward first, her eyes wide with despair. Please, just hear us out," she begged, her voice shaking. I stared at her. The same woman who said she'd be better off without me. Who had repeatedly shoved me aside. So now, she was standing on my porch, pleading for assistance. "What the hell are you doing here?" I asked, my voice rising. "You think just because you show up at my door, I'm going to take you back? You think I'm going to forget everything you've done?" Dad shuffled uneasily behind Mom but did not speak. My sister stood next to him, staring at the ground and avoiding my look. We're sorry," Mom admitted, her voice breaking. "We've been trying to reach you, but we know we've messed up. It's just so hard, and we don't know what else to do. You're the only one who can help us. The only one who can help you." I felt the rage surge like a tidal wave. "You didn't need me before. Why now?" "You had years to fix this," I retorted. "Years. And you never once bothered to reach out. To make things right. Not when it mattered. And now you think you can just show up here and make everything okay?" They remained silent for a minute, evidently surprised by my coolness. Mom's eyes filled with tears. But I could not force myself to care. "We've been struggling," she said in a desperate whisper. "We don't have money for rent. Your sister's future is slipping away. I don't know what else to do." I clenched my fist. "Don't tell me you don't know what else to do," I exclaimed, my voice quivering with rage. "You had choices. You made choices. And I wasn't part of them. But now that everything's falling apart, suddenly you want me?" Mom took a step forward, hand outstretched. "Please, just listen." I slammed the door on her face. The sound resonated throughout the home. The boom rang in my ears. And for a brief moment, I felt a rush of power. I could finally take control of this situation. But while I stood there with my hand on the door handle, something gnawed at me. Something twisted in my stomach. It wasn't a case of guilt, it was terrible. It was the knowledge that they'd come here, to me, because they had nowhere else to go. And they had shown up. Not because they wanted to improve our connection, not because they were genuinely remorseful, but they needed me, and I despised it. They did not deserve me. But rage was not the only emotion I felt. A part of me wanted to hurt them. To show them how terribly they had messed up. Make them suffer the consequences of their own conduct. And the fact that they assumed they could simply walk up on my doorstep. It got me angry more than anything else. I moved away from the door, leaving them standing on the other side. But they did not leave. I could hear them conversing outside. Mom was pleading. My sister was crying. Dad was attempting to console them. I couldn't take it anymore. The rage within me was tremendous, and I knew I'd regret not doing something. So I reopened the door. There they were. Standing there. Still waiting. Desperation was written all over their features. Mom's eyes were red from crying. My sister hung her head low in shame, and Dad? He appeared defeated. Like a man who had lost everything and had no idea how to get it back. For a moment, I simply stood there, taking in the view of them. The family that had harmed me. The family had made me feel useless. Invisible. So now, they were here, asking for assistance. But what do I owe them? Nothing. I took a deep breath. And then, without saying anything, I took one last glance at them. No. You don't get to come here and expect forgiveness just because you're struggling now. The words came out coldly. Hard. Like a scalpel cutting through the strain. I didn't feel any regret as I stated them. They deserve to hear the truth. You had years to fix this, I said, my tone steady but forceful. Years to realize what you lost. But you didn't care then. And I'm not going to be your solution now. I noticed Mom open her mouth in protest. But I held up my hand to silence her. I built my life. My success. From the ground up. And I'm not going to let you destroy it too. You don't get to come into my life and expect everything to magically change because you've hit rock bottom. Their eyes started welling up again. But I felt nothing. There is no guilt, no regret. Just some calm satisfaction. I knew I was finally putting myself first. Go, I stated simply, my tone unyielding. Fix your own mess, I'm done. I closed the door for the final time. Weeks have passed, and I continued living my life. My business has grown, my network expanded, and I felt more energized than ever. I had become the person I had always wished to be. The person who did not have to apologize for their accomplishments. The one who had learned to let go of the negative aspects of their history. I never heard from them again. Not a message. Not a call. And you know what? It was fine. It was the tranquil peace I hadn't realized I'd been seeking. And as time passed, I came to realize something important. The ones who have wronged you, those who abandoned you, are not the people you should seek validation. You are the one who matters. You get to select what happens to your future. In the end, I had discovered one very simple truth. You can't keep giving to individuals who have never given you anything back. The door closed. For good. Neglected by my family, I left. When my brother was arrested, they begged for help. I demanded an apology, then refused. Do you ever feel like you're just there? Like you exist in a space but no one sees you? That is how it has always been in my family. I wasn't the perfect child. I was not the troublemaker. Just the one in the middle. The one who performed what was required but never quite enough. It started little. Small things. My parents forgot to save me a plate for dinner. My brother took my items without asking, knowing that no one would care if I protested. They never explicitly stated that I wasn't wanted, at least not at first, but it was always there. In the way people spoke around me, my existence seemed like an afterthought. I attempted to brush it off. Families were not perfect, correct? Perhaps I was simply being sensitive. Maybe if I worked more and performed better, they'd finally see me as someone worth keeping. So I worked hard. I made certain that my grades were solid. I helped around the house, I remained out of trouble. However, it never seemed to matter. My brother? He could do whatever he wanted, talk back, skip chores, fail a class, it made no difference. My parents would make excuses for him. He's only a kid. He's going through a difficult moment, you should be more supportive of him. Every time I brought out the disparity in how we were treated, I became the problem. It was difficult. The resentment eventually bubbled over. But it's not from me. From them. It was Saturday night. I'd just come home from work. Nothing extraordinary, simply a part-time job at a neighborhood grocery store. My parents never gave me much money, so I worked on weekends to save some. My brother, on the other hand, did not need to lift a finger. He received everything he wanted. I entered the house, tired. The first thing I saw was him sitting on the couch, controller in hand, deeply immersed in his game. A half-eaten dish of food rested on the table. And my backpack is on the floor. Open. My notebooks and papers were spilled on the carpeting. What the hell, dude? I sighed and bent down to gather up my belongings. Oh yeah, he mumbled, staring at the television. We needed paper. I took some. As I flipped through my notebook, my stomach sank. My notes, which I had spent hours on, were gone. Torn out. I clenched my jaw. Are you serious? He finally looked at me and said, relax. It's simply some pointless notes. It's not like you do anything important. That landed harder than it should have. Perhaps because deep down, I knew that was how he saw me. How everyone saw me. Where are they? I inquired, my voice tight. He scoffed. Dunno. Probably in the trash. I'm not sure what happened at that moment, but something inside me snapped. Not in a violent, screaming way, but in a cold, calm knowledge. I was not one of them. Not really. I took a deep breath and forced myself to remain calm. You're unbelievable, I mumbled as I walked by him to the kitchen. That's when my folks entered. And that's when things started to go wrong. My mother and father entered, laughing at something, an inside joke between them. Something I never participated in, but as they noticed me standing there, their demeanor changed. What's with this attitude? My father asked, his eyes narrowing. I sighed sharply while still holding my destroyed notebook. Ask him, I said, nodding to my brother. He ripped out my notes. I just threw them away like they were nothing. My mother scarcely glanced at him. It's just paper, she remarked with a dismissive palm. I stared between them, expecting something. Even anything as simple as that wasn't cool or don't do that again. But nothing. Instead, my brother smirked. Yeah, it's just paper, he repeated, as if he knew he had already won. I felt my fingers tightening around the notebook. Right. Of course. I turned to head upstairs, but my father's voice stopped me. You know, this attitude is exactly why no one wants to be around you. I froze. What? I inquired, turning slowly. Dumb, my mother moaned, as if she had grown tired of me. You overreact to everything. Constantly playing the victim. Always creating problems. Is this causing problems? I gave out a sour laugh. For what? Expecting basic respect? Because I don't want my belongings trashed? My brother snorted. God, you're so dramatic. I shake my head. You behave as if I'm the problem, but you don't even notice what's occurring. You just let him do what he wants. Dad folded his arms. Because he's not the one constantly whining. That hit hard. But not as difficult as what happened later. My brother lay back on the couch, arms extended behind his head, smirking. No one wants you here, man. I felt my stomach drop. But my parents' reaction broke something in me. They nodded. They truly nodded. My mom didn't say anything. My father didn't argue. They just stood there silently. As if they had already accepted that fact. I did not yell. I did not beg them to take it back. I just breathed. And something inside of me went cold. Okay, I replied simply. And I went upstairs to pack my stuff. And I left. But this was not the end. Not even close. Because the next morning, my phone was filled with 12 missed calls. And that's when I realized that leaving was the best decision I'd ever made. I did not answer any of the calls. Not at first. I simply gazed at my phone, watching as the notifications piled up. My brother. My dad. Even my mother. For a family that didn't want me, they were frantic to contact me now. I let it ring. I was not in a haste. After leaving last night, I didn't have a plan. I threw my belongings in a duffel bag and walked out, feeling numb. I crashed at a friend's place, someone who genuinely cared about me. He didn't ask any questions. I didn't push. He simply tossed me a blanket and added, "You can stay as long as you need." It was more kindness than my own family had shown me in many years. They wanted something now. And I suspected it wasn't because they missed me. By the time the calls ceased, a few texts began to arrive. The first ones were exactly what I imagined. Mom. You are acting immature. Come back. Dad. Enough with this crap. You should quit acting like a child. I scoffed. Yes, I actually left. They were definitely not apologetic. Then a new message arrived. One event transformed everything. Mom. Come home now. We have an issue. I glanced at the screen, my pulse quickening. Is there a problem? I considered ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. I finally texted back. Only 2 words. Me. What happened? Her reply came almost immediately. Mom. Your brother messed up. Bad. And just like that, I knew. They did not miss me. They did not want me back. They needed me. And that gave me an idea. I lay back on the couch and stared at my phone. So they needed me. Interesting. I was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, I allowed them to sweat a little. If my brother had truly messed up, whatever happened was significant enough that my parents, who had never taken my side, were now reaching out. After around 10 minutes of silence, more texts started arriving. Dad. We don't have time for your attitude, just come home. Mom. Please. This is serious, seriously. That almost made me laugh. When my troubles became serious, they advised me to get over them. But now that my brother was in peril, it became crucial. I took my time penning the next response. Me? It's not my problem. A minute has passed. Then another. Then my father called. I let it ring, declined. A second later, a text appeared. Dad. You are being selfish. I breathed sharply through my nose. Selfish? That was impressive coming from him. Then my mother texted again. Mom. Your brother has been arrested. I blinked. Okay, now I am interested. I took my friend's car keys from the countertop. I need a ride. He raised an eyebrow. You sure? Thought you were done with them. I smirked. Oh, I am. But I need to see this for myself. 15 minutes later I pulled up in front of my home. My father was pacing on the porch, phone in hand, and appeared more anxious than I'd ever seen him. My mother sat on the steps, head in her hands. For once, no one laughed, no disparaging remarks, just pure panic. Silence. I took my time walking up. So, I casually inquired. Who wants to tell me what happened? My father turned, his gaze steely. Where the hell have you been? I raised an eyebrow. Not here, like you wanted? He clenched his teeth, but before he could respond, my mother spoke. It's your brother, she explained, her voice cracking. He stole something? From the wrong people? I frowned. The wrong people? Dad ran his fingers over his face. Some guys at that arcade he hangs out at. We don't know the details, but they called the cops. He's in holding right now. I nearly laughed. Of course, my brother had spent years treating me like garbage, believing he was untouchable. And now, the actual world had struck him like a truck. I crossed my arms. And what do you want me to do about it? Mom shot me a frantic look. We need money. For a lawyer. Bail. Something. We need your help. I stared at her for a long time. Then I finally grinned. They needed me. But I didn't need them. After years of shoving me aside and treating me like I was nothing, they now looked at me as if I were their only hope. And in a way, I was. I tucked my hands in my pockets and tilted my head slightly. So let me get this straight, I muttered. You told me I was unwanted. You let my brother treat me like garbage. You didn't care when I walked out. But now that he's in trouble, you suddenly remember I exist? My father's jaw stiffened. This isn't about that. This is about family. I laughed. A brief piercing noise. Oh, now we're family? That's funny. Because last night, I was a burden. Mom's eyes were begging. Please. We can talk about all of that later. Right now, we need to get him out before this gets worse. I let out a slow breath, pretending to think about it. And how much money are we talking about? Dad exhaled. Bail is set at $10,000. We can pay a portion, but we need you to cover the rest. I whistled. 10 grand, huh? Sounds serious. My mother perked up somewhat. So, you'll do it? I smirked. Oh, absolutely not. Their faces sank so quickly that I nearly felt awful. Almost. Excuse me? My father snapped. I shrugged. Not my problem. Mom's voice crackled. But, he's your brother. I shake my head. He's your son. I corrected with a firm voice. And you made it very clear that I was never part of this family. Dad stepped forward, wrath in his eyes. You think you're proving a point? You think this is funny? I met his stare without flinching. No. I smirked. I think it's fair. Mom grabbed my arm, her words urgent. We'll pay you back, I took a step backward. You think I trust you? The people who threw me away without a second thought? Her lips opened and closed, but she said nothing. I shake my head. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to figure this out without me, just like you always wanted. And I'm going to walk away, just like you told me to. I turned on my heels and returned to my friend's car. My father cried after me, don't you dare walk away from us. I looked over my shoulder. You already did it first. Then I got in my car and drove away, leaving them in the mess they had created. I drove away. My fists gripped around the steering wheel. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt like I finally had the last laugh. But, instead? I felt hollow. Not because I regretted my decision, they deserved it, but because after all, even when they begged for my assistance, I knew they still didn't consider me family. They simply saw me as a solution. A wallet. A safety net. And now, that net was gone. That night, I sat in my room, reading through my phone and eating a beautiful, fatty burger from my favorite takeout restaurant. It was serene. Quiet. I hadn't experienced a night like this in years living under that roof. I considered turning my phone on mute, but I couldn't resist checking my alerts. Surprise, surprise, my family had not given up. Mom sent 3 SMS in a row. Mom. Let's work something out. Please let's speak. Mother. Your brother is still in jail. We're having trouble getting the money together. Mom. Please, I understand we were tough previously, but we're family. I almost choked on my soda. Are we now a family? Did they finally care? That was lavish. I was pondering whether to answer when another text arrived, this time from my father. Dad. See, we can repay you. You simply need to trust us. That one had me laughing out loud. Trust them. The same people who for years treated me as if I were an unwanted guest in my own home? Are these the same people who advised me to leave without hesitation? Yeah. Right. Just as I was about to put my phone down, another message arrived. Brother. Come on, man. Are you really going to let me rot here? Oh, this was really amazing. After everything he's put me through, all the times he's shoved me around, mocked me, and labeled me useless, what now? Now he sought my assistance. I decided to have some fun. Me. You said no one wanted me around. I'm simply respecting your requests. Delivered, read. No response. I smiled at myself, extended my arms behind my head, and ate another piece of my burger. Life was good. The following morning, I awoke to a rush of messages. Groggy, I massaged my eyes, unlocked my phone, and began scrolling through them. Apparently, things were getting tough for the family at home. Dad. We had to sell both the TV and my golf clubs. Your mother is furious at me. I hope you're happy. Dad. Please. We don't know what to do now. And then, the best one yet. Brother. I swear to God, when I leave, you better hope I don't find you. That was hilarious. Was the same guy who needed my help now threatening me? I chose to respond. Me. That is some strong language for someone who requires my assistance. Try again. An hour passed before my mother swallowed her pride and sent another message. Mom. Please, we are definitely struggling. I let her sit in her desperation for a few minutes before responding. Me. I'll bail him out. On one condition. She did not hesitate. Mom. Anything? I smirked. I want a public apology. In the family group chat. A long one. I want you all to admit every horrible thing you've said to me, and I want you to thank me for helping. I knew that would hurt my father's pride. But if they needed my help so desperately, they'd have to beg for it. It did take them a bit. But eventually, a new message appeared in the family group chat. Dad. We need to discuss how we've treated you. We've made mistakes, and we now see how deeply we've wounded him. We profoundly regret our comments and behavior. He is an essential member of our family, and we appreciate his generosity in assisting us during this tough time. It was stiff, it was forced, and it was quite humiliating for them. Perfect. I gave them a simple thumbs up emoji and proceeded about my day. Did I really bail my brother out? Haha. Absolutely not. But at least I received the apologies I had always deserved. Next week, my brother called me. Man, I can't believe you did this to me, he said over the phone, his voice heavy with rage. I thought you were better than this. I couldn't help laughing. It was not a malicious chuckle. It's more like the giggle you get when the universe gives you precisely what you deserve. Better than what? I inquired, my voice light and even humorous. I'm just giving you what you wanted. You told me I wasn't wanted, remember? So now you get to stay exactly where you belong. I could hear him smashing something into the jail bars in the distance. You can't do this? You're really just leaving me here? I paused for a moment before responding. You know, I thought I might bail you out. I really did. But you, and the rest of the family, you've made it pretty clear that I don't matter. I paused to allow the words to sink in. So now? I get to laugh. I get to enjoy my life, knowing that I'm out here living it on my terms while you're stuck. Enjoy your stay. He did not say anything for a while. I could almost see him furious on the other end. But I didn't care. After years of being regarded as an afterthought, like an unseen shadow in the backdrop, this was my moment. When I hung up the phone, a sense of relief washed over me. I wasn't angry anymore. In fact, I couldn't feel the resentment I used to harbor for them. Everything had melted away. Just like that. My brother remained in jail. They did everything to get him out, but the charges were so serious that they couldn't help him. They begged and pleaded, but the reality was, they needed me far more than I needed them. As for me, I walked away. Hold your head high. I knew I'd finally returned my power. I didn't have to move a finger to make their lives miserable. They had already done it for me. All I had to do was relax, enjoy my quiet, and know that they would never see me the same way again. And whenever I looked at my phone, with its continual reminders of how desperate they were, I smiled. Because in the end, it wasn't only about the money, it was about the sweet, fulfilling taste of vengeance. For the first time in years, I was finally living for myself. Honestly, this story is quite satisfying. The protagonist was mistreated by his family, but the way he turned the tables and refused to help his brother was great. It's like the best revenge. And he didn't even need to do anything drastic, just let them face the consequences. What are your thoughts? Was that the correct decision, or did he go too far? Would you have helped? Or is this retribution well deserved? Let me know your thoughts. My girlfriend cheated with her boss, and our friends knew. I walked away. She tried to ruin me, but karma struck back. They lost everything. This morning, my phone exploded with 32 missed calls. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. The indicators were there, spread like breadcrumbs during the final months of our relationship. But after 3 years with someone, you tend to give them the benefit of the doubt. At least, that's what I was telling myself. It began with tiny things. Allison started working late more frequently, which is not uncommon during busy seasons. But then came the new perfume I didn't recognize, clothes I'd never seen before appearing in our wardrobe, and her phone suddenly becoming this hallowed object that was always within arm's reach. I've never been the jealous kind, but something felt strange. When I attempted to hug her from behind while she was texting, she would move away. How she'd walk out to accept calls while stating they were work-related. The frequent girls' nights with folks whose names I had never heard before. Last Tuesday, as I was folding clothes, her phone lit up on the coffee table. A message preview from someone named Jay appeared. I miss you already. Last night, the rest was cut off, but my stomach sank. I didn't want to be the person who snoops through his girlfriend's phone, but the universe appeared to be telling me to wake up. When she arrived home that night, I decided to be direct. She was in the kitchen, preparing a smoothie as if nothing were wrong. The sound of the blender filled our flat as I leaned against the doorframe to watch her. "Who's Jay?" I inquired as she finally switched it off. Her posture changed instantly. Her shoulders stiffened, but then she did something unexpected. She smiled. She smiled coldly and almost triumphantly, rather than her customary warmth. "Wondering when you'd finally catch on, Michael," she remarked, taking a sip from her glass. "Jay's my boss, and yes, I've been sleeping with him for the past 2 months." The nonchalant manner in which she said it felt like a slap. No guilt, no humiliation, only pride. "I needed a real man," she added, smirking. "Someone who knows what he wants and goes for it. Not someone who spends his weekends playing video games with Jacob and watching stupid movies." I stood there, pondering her words. After 3 years together, is this how she truly saw me? Through the shock, I felt something else rise. Not rage, but an odd sense of clarity. "Does Chloe know?" I inquired, remembering our mutual buddy who had introduced us. "Oh, she's known for weeks," Allison said, laughing. "Most of our friends know. They understand. Jay can actually provide a future, not just dreams and excuses." That stung harder than the cheating admission. These folks with whom we'd shared birthdays, holidays, and many dinners had all been watching this, most likely laughing behind my back. I took out my phone and entered the group chat with Jacob and Chloe. "Is that true? Did you all know?" Jacob's response arrived swiftly. "Bro, you're fantastic, but Allison deserves someone more experienced. Don't take this personally." Chloe joined in. "We did not mean to hurt you, but perhaps this is the wake-up call you need." I looked up from my phone to see Allison observing me with the same smirk on her lips. She was hoping for an explosion, drama, and a scene she could tell everyone about later. Poor, immature Michael is losing his calm. Instead, I smiled, a genuine smile that appeared to catch her off guard. Without saying anything, I walked to our bedroom, dug out my go bag, which I normally keep prepared for weekend getaways, and grabbed my laptop and keys. Allison was staring at me as I walked back through the kitchen, her smirk weakening slightly. "Where are you going?" she questioned. "Out," I answered simply. "And Allison, keep the apartment. I'm sure Jay can help with the rent." I heard her begin to say something as I closed the door behind me, but I didn't pause to listen. My phone was already vibrating with texts, most likely from our so-called pals attempting to justify themselves. As I drove away, I turned off my phone and felt something unexpected: relief. Sometimes losing everything reveals what you never had in the first place. Update 1. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who responded to my previous post. I never anticipated it to blow up like that. A lot has happened in the last week, and I'm still absorbing it. I've been staying in a modest motel on the outskirts of town. It's not the most glamorous place, but it's clean, and the owner, an older man named Pete, appears to be a nice guy. He even reduced the weekly rent by $20 after hearing my story. I turned on my phone after 2 days of silence, 32 missed calls and 47 text messages. The majority were from Allison, some from Jacob and Chloe, and a few from numbers I didn't recognize. What drew my attention, however, was the social media notification storm. Allison had been busy, very busy. Her Instagram story depicted a picture that I scarcely recognized. Apparently, I was a controlling, jealous boyfriend who watched her every movement. According to her posts, I emotionally tortured her for years, cut her off from friends, and threw a violent tantrum when she finally stood up for herself. Each post received hundreds of sympathetic responses, including some from people I thought were friends. What about the crown jewel? In a sad video, she claimed I had financially mistreated her by forcing her to divide all of our bills 50-50 while I hoarded my money. Rich, considering she earned more than I did and insisted on the arrangement herself. Then came a text from Gemma, a coworker I'd known for years. "Hey, you might want to check your email. Something's going around the office about you." Sure enough, there was a company-wide email about creating a safe workplace environment, with a thinly veiled reference to recent troubling activities by specific workers. There were no names stated, but the timing was hardly subtle. I should have become angry. Perhaps I should have pushed back and shared my side of the story. Instead, I was curious. How far would she go? It turns out to be quite far. Yesterday, I went to our local coffee shop, which I assumed would be safe because Allison despised their coffee. Wrong. The barista, who had usually been kind, gave me a look as if I had attached to her shoe. Later, I discovered Allison had become a regular, telling her survival story with everyone who would listen. But this is where things become interesting. While retrieving some things from storage, I ran upon Juliana, Allison's alleged best friend. She appeared uneasy, peering around as if she was worried about being spotted chatting to me. "You need to be careful," she said quietly. "Jay isn't just her boss. His wife, she's connected. Like, really connected. And Allison's been telling her you're unstable. Dangerous, even." "Why are you telling me this?" Juliana's gaze flashed around again. "Because this isn't the first time. Before you, there was another guy at work. Allison and Jay. They did the same thing to him. He ended up leaving town. That talk altered everything. I spent the night researching legal records, social media, whatever I could discover. It turns out the preceding man existed. Mark something. Allison disappeared totally from social media around the time she started at the company. This morning, I received a call from our landlord. Allison attempted to remove my name from the lease, alleging I had abandoned the property. When it didn't work, she informed him that I had been threatening her. He called to warn me. It turned out his sister had gone through something similar years before. But here's the real kicker. During all of this, I received a message request on Instagram from an account I did not recognize. The profile image was of a woman in her 40s, elegantly dressed and wearing costly jewelry. The message was simple: "I believe we should discuss my husband and your girlfriend. Coffee tomorrow." It was signed by Mrs. J. I'm meeting her in an hour. Something tells me Allison's true guy story is going to get a lot more complicated. The weird thing is, watching Allison create this sophisticated web of lies, and seeing our friends take sides based solely on her word, is very liberating. Every hateful message, every phony tear, and every fabricated narrative only reinforces what I already knew. I am not losing anything worth keeping. Update 2. Sorry for the delayed update. The last 2 weeks have been crazy. What about the coffee meetup with Mrs. J? Game changer. It turns out that she's been accumulating evidence for months, not only about Allison and her husband, but about a larger pattern of behavior inside the corporation. Remember how Juliana mentioned the person who had left town? He was not the first. Mrs. J has documented at least 3 similar incidents in the previous 5 years, with young employees becoming connected with her husband and then assisting in the removal of anyone who could expose them. What is the difference this time? Mrs. J had finished playing quietly. She had texts, emails, expense records, and security footage from the workplace parking garage. But she wanted one more thing: public visibility. This is where the yearly corporate party came in. I didn't intend to attend, why would I? Mrs. J had other ideas. Sometimes, she reminded me, the best retribution is simply letting people show their true colors. The party was held at a luxury downtown hotel. I arrived late and dressed nicer than I ever had on these occasions. What were the glances I got when I stepped in? Priceless. Allison almost dropped her drink. Jay's face changed from red to white so quickly that I thought he'd pass out. But here's the best part: I didn't have to do anything. Chloe approached first, obviously tipsy. "You've got some nerve showing up here," she mumbled, loud enough for adjacent groups to hear. "After everything you put Allison through." I just smiled. Everything I put her through? That's interesting. Tell me more. That was when Gemma walked in. Remember her? My coworker? She'd been quietly gathering her own evidence, screenshots of Allison talking about her escapades in business chat groups, recordings of her discussing how to spin the narrative with Jay. "Actually," Gemma said, "I think we'd all like to hear the real story." The following hour was like watching dominoes fall. Mrs. J arrived precisely on time, tablet in hand. The projector mistakenly began presenting a slideshow of embarrassing messages and photographs. Allison's increasingly desperate attempts to preserve control of her narrative. Jacob, however, put on the real show. Good old bros come before hoes, except when the hoe can help my career. Jacob. He'd been photographing everything with his phone, intending to present it to Jay later to prove his loyalty or something. Instead, he captured Allison's entire tantrum. "You think you're so clever," she was screaming at me. "You and that bitter old woman, trying to ruin everything I've built. Jay loves me. We're going to have a life together." Mrs. J chose to share the cherry on top. Divorce paperwork, already filed. It turned out that Jay had promised Allison the same future that he had promised the other employees. Same script, but different actress. What is the best part? Throughout this, I rarely spoke. I just watched years of manipulation and falsehoods unravel in real time. Juliana, who had been quiet throughout the evening, eventually spoke up. "I helped her," she said, addressing the now quiet chamber. "I helped her destroy that other guy's reputation. I can't do it again." By midnight, the party had effectively ended. Allison stormed out, mascara running down her face. Jay was confined in his office with HR. What about those friends who were so willing to trust her stories? They couldn't look me in the eyes as I left. Mrs. J grabbed my arm. "Thank you," she said, "for being the one who didn't run." I drove home to my motel room, feeling surprisingly calm. Pete was still awake, watching late-night television in the office. He took one look at my face and smiled. "Good night? You could say that?" This morning, my phone blew up again, this time in a different tone. Apologies, explanations. People claim they never truly trusted Allison's stories. I even received a note from Mark, the person who left town. Apparently, he has been following everything via mutual ties. Sometimes, karma doesn't require our assistance, it only requires an audience. Final update. This is it, the final chapter of this drama, and believe me, it has been an incredible ride. You may want to get some popcorn for this one. First and foremost, the fallout from the workplace party was more severe than anyone had anticipated. Within 48 hours, Jay and Allison were asked to quit. But that was only the beginning. Remember the documents Mrs. J had collected? It turns out there was more, much more. Jay had fabricated all of his expense reports to disguise his business dinners with Allison. Every correspondence in which they planned against fellow colleagues. Each falsified performance review. She gave it all to the board of directors. The company's legal team worked extremely quickly. They were more concerned with the trend of workplace harassment and financial malfeasance than with the affairs themselves. Both Jay and Allison are currently facing civil litigation. But this is where things become interesting. Remember Mark, the guy who skipped town? He came back. And he brought receipts. Literally and figuratively. It turns out he documented everything before he left, including the smear campaign Allison and Jay launched against him. He didn't know what to do with it all, until now. Mrs. J introduced him to her lawyer. 3 days later, he brought his own complaint. Then something lovely occurred. Other former employees began coming forward, each with their own story and evidence. What began as a single scandal suddenly became an avalanche. Allison attempted to get ahead of it. She uploaded an emotional video in which she claimed to be the true victim, having been duped by Jay and is now being persecuted. That's when Juliana developed a spine. She shared images of their private chats, in which Allison boasted about her escapades and plotted to harm people's reputations. The ones in which she insulted her victims. Allison visited my motel last week. Pete, the owner, called me at work. That girl you told me about? She's making a scene in the parking lot. I took my time driving home. I found her sitting on the hood of my car, mascara streaked and clutching a manila envelope. I have dirt on everyone, she stated, attempting to sound scary despite her wavering voice. If you don't help me stop this, I'll release it all. I just chuckled. Go ahead. Burn every bridge you have left. See how that works out. She flung the envelope at me. Inside were images, screenshots, and private messages, which she had accumulated over years of influencing others. Her insurance policy. I photographed every single page while she watched. Then I handed it back to her. Release whatever you want. But first, look at where your previous schemes got you. What about folks like Allison? They cannot stand when their weapons are used against them. She ripped up the envelope right there in the parking lot, shouting about how we'd all regret it. Was that a tantrum? Someone recorded it. Within a few hours, it had spread over social media. The ultimate blow occurred yesterday. Mrs. J's divorce was final, and, guess what? She received everything? The house? The autos. Most of their assets. Jay's golden parachute from his company? Gone to pay legal fees. What's his reputation? Destroyed? What are his future professional prospects? Let's just say, Google is no longer his friend. How about Allison? According to what I've heard, she's returning to live with her parents in another state. Her social media has gone dark. Those that sided with her? They are dealing with their own fallout. It turns out that backing the wrong horse has consequences. Jacob attempted to apologize yesterday. I sent him a long note on how he could have been a better friend. I simply responded with a screenshot of his previous messages supporting Allison. He stopped me. Coward. Chloe is also conducting damage control. She is concerned that the screenshots Allison saved may have an impact on her own career. I almost feel bad. Almost. Me? I just signed a lease for a new apartment. I got a promotion at work. It's funny how removing poisonous people improves things. And yes, I'm seeing someone new. Taking it slowly. Doing things correctly. Plotting and scheming are not the best ways to exact revenge. It's living well while allowing people to harm themselves. But I will not lie. It's been really pleasant to watch everything burn. This will be my final update. Thank you for joining along for the ride, Reddit. Remember, karma doesn't need your help. Sometimes you just have to step aside and let folks show their true colors. I discovered my family only valued my money, not me. I cut them off, reclaimed my life, and found freedom in choosing myself over their manipulation. My name is Emma, and until a few nights ago, I believed that my family loved me. It began with a simple notification. My aunt had given me a video. I was in the midst of preparing dinner when my phone rang. I wiped my hands on a towel, grabbed my phone, and unintentionally tapped the message. At first, I assumed she sent me something random, a family movie, or an old film she found amusing. But then I heard my mom's voice. Emma should be grateful. She'd be nothing without us. My stomach sank. The video looked unsteady, as if someone had laid their phone down without realizing it was recording, but the voices were perfectly audible. A pathetic failure? That's what Emma is, my father said with a laugh. But at least she's good for something, paying our bills. Laughter? I held my phone more tightly. If Emma ever stopped sending money, my aunt, who had just sent this, said with a smirk, we'd just guilt her into it. She's too soft to say no. My entire body became numb. Emma. This is my name. They weren't discussing a hypothetical person. They were not fooling around. They were talking about me. I had been assisting them for years, paying their rent, covering their debts, and spending my own funds to ensure they never struggled in the same manner I did. And is this what they truly thought of me? I was still stuck, my thumb hanging over the screen, when the video abruptly disappeared. This message has been unsent. I gazed at the notification. My aunt realized her error. She must have panicked and deleted the video, assuming I hadn't noticed. I should have challenged her. Should have called her out. I should have told them I knew everything. But instead, I put down my phone and pretended I hadn't seen it. And that's when I determined I wouldn't react. Not yet. I had a plan. I sat for what seemed like hours, staring at my phone. The words echoed in my thoughts. Emma should be grateful. A pathetic failure. She's too soft to say no. I wanted to believe there was a misunderstanding. Perhaps they were joking. Perhaps I was missing some context. But deep inside I knew better. I knew the truth. They intended every word. And the worst part? They were not wrong about one thing: I was too soft to say no. How many times had they guilted me into assisting them? How many times have I put my own life on hold to ensure they got what they required? My father's temporary financial difficulties developed into me paying rent for years. My brother's tuition, he didn't even complete college. My mother's incessant emergencies, always neatly timed when I had just been paid. And I had done everything without hesitation. Because that's what families are meant to do, right? I had spent years convincing myself that I was doing the correct thing. They appreciated me. They said they loved me. But that one video shattered every fantasy I had left. And now they believed they had gotten away with it. My aunt had unsent the message, perhaps breathing a sigh of relief that I hadn't noticed it. Perhaps she even reassured everyone. Don't worry, Emma didn't watch it. They assumed I was still in the dark. That was my advantage. I could have texted her right there. Could have confronted her. I told her I had seen everything. But what would that accomplish? They'd simply deny it. Make excuses. Twist the circumstances so that I feel guilty. I'd let them assume I was still their dutiful little financial account, for the time being. The next payment was due in a few days. And this time, things would be different. The next morning, I awoke to my normal routine, but everything felt different. The sun still shone through my drapes. My coffee brewed just as it usually did. But there was this awareness in the back of my mind, as if I was observing my life from a new perspective. My phone vibrated. A message from my mother. Mom. Morning, sweetie, just checking in. I hope you're doing well. I stared at the message. It was usual, too normal. She never texted me simply to check in. There was always a cause, and a request was hidden somewhere. And just a few minutes later. Mom. Oh, by the way, the rent is due soon. Can you send it by Friday? There it was. The same cycle. The same motif. But this time, I was not going to play along. I typed a response with my fingertips hovering over the keyboard. My typical response would be something like of course, or no issue. Maybe I'd even apologize for taking so long, just so they didn't feel inconvenienced. Not this time. I deleted everything and simply responded, I can't this month. Before sending the message, I glanced at it for a few seconds. I set down my phone and waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Buzz. Mom. What do you mean, you can't? I could see the displeasure on the television. I'd never said no before. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I took a sip of my coffee, leaving her to stew in her bewilderment. A couple more messages arrived. Mom. Emma, this is serious? We are counting on you. You know we don't have any other options right now. Another buzz. This time it's from my aunt. Aunt. Hello, honey. Your mother is freaking out. Is everything okay? I nearly laughed. Is everything okay? Sure. Everything was excellent. I had spent years paying for their life, and when I hinted at stopping, they panicked. They never asked me if I was all right, if I needed assistance. It never was about me. It had never been. I took a deep breath and responded. Me. I've had some unexpected bills this month. I cannot send anything. Sorry. That was it. There's no explanation, no apologies. And then I waited. What happened next revealed all I needed to know. The silence was terrible. For the first time in years, I had declined. They didn't know how to manage it. I stared at my phone, watching the 3 small dots appear and disappear. Over and over. My mom was typing. Stopping. Typing again. I envisioned her sitting there, fuming, trying to figure out the best way to persuade me to change my decision. Finally, her response got through. Mom. Emma, what do you mean by unexpected expenses? Is there anything more essential than your family? There it was. Guilt trip. They had always employed the same technique. I didn't respond. I simply let the message sit there. Less than 1 minute later. Mom. You know your brother doesn't have a way to pay his rent. If he's kicked out, that's on you. Ah. The brother card. Classic. Then another message. Mom. Emma, we raised you. We cared for you when you had nothing. Is this how you're repaying us? I gritted my jaw and tightened my fingers around my phone. When I had nothing? They never cared for me. I put myself through school. I worked 3 jobs to get out of that house. And as soon as I got money, they hung on to me like leeches, sucking me dry. They grabbed everything, so I had nothing. My phone vibrated again. Aunt Emma, dear, do not do this. We are family. Your mother is merely upset. You know how she gets. Simply send the rent, and everything will be okay. Everything will be okay. Who is it fine for? I put down my phone, my heart hammering. I needed a second to breathe and ponder. I strolled to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and took a slow sip while looking at the clock on the wall. I could feel something shifting within me. For years, I had been afraid of this moment. I was afraid that if I stopped paying, they would detest me. They would cut me off. They would turn their back on me. But now I know the truth. They've never loved me. They adored what I could offer them. And the moment that ceased, they would reveal who they were. Buzz. I strolled back to my phone and picked it up with firm hands. This time, the communication came from my father. Dad. Emma, I'm not sure what has gotten into you, but this is unacceptable. You are being selfish. This family needs you, and you're behaving like an entitled brat. Grow up and do the right thing. There it was. The final mask slips. No more faking kindness. No more pretending to care, just demands. I stared at the words, my heart racing in my ears. Then another notification came up. A voice message. From my aunt. My hands trembled as I paused, my thumb lingering above the play button. Something told me this would change everything. I hesitated for a long time, staring at the small play button on the screen. A voice message. From Aunt D. My heart beat against my ribcage. She was not the type to send voice messages. If she had something to say, she usually sugarcoated it in text, passive-aggressive with just enough phony sweetness to make me feel bad. But this was different. Slowly, I pressed play. Her voice came through, harsh and impatient. Aunt. Listen, Emma. I'm not sure what game you're playing, but this isn't humorous. Your mother is losing her sanity. Your father is upset. And honestly, I do not blame them. You have always been a little ungrateful. But this is quite selfish. I felt my gut clench, but I forced myself to continue listening. Aunt. You have a wonderful job, right? You earn more than any of us. You don't even need the money. Meanwhile, your family is struggling. So what? Did you just wake up one day and realize you don't care? A bitter laugh. You owe them, Emma. After all they've done for you. Following all the sacrifices they made. They gave you life. Now you're going to walk away? Pretend they do not exist. What kind of a daughter would do that? She breathed forcefully, and for a moment I believed she was finished. But then, Aunt. You know what? Her tone altered, becoming colder now. If you truly want to be that kind of person, that's fine. But do not expect them to forgive you. Don't expect to come crawling back once you discover how much you rely on them. Because when you pass this line, there's no going back. The message terminated. Silence. I let the words sink, my thumb hovering over the replay button. My ears rang, and my hands were numb. I should have been afraid. I should have panicked. I should have been hurrying to make things right, to correct this, to apologize. But instead, I felt relaxed. More than that, I felt free. Because she'd just verified everything. They did not love me. They did not respect me. They did not even recognize me as a person. They regarded me as nothing more than a financial account. A moving, breathing ATM. And the instant I stopped distributing money, I was nothing. And if that was the case, perhaps it was time to become nothing to them. Buzz. Another communication from my mom. Mom. This is your last opportunity, Emma. Send the rent. I stared at the message for a very long time. Then, without hesitation, I blocked her. I blocked my father, I blocked my aunt. And suddenly, for the first time in years, I was free. Or so I thought. Because the next day, my brother arrived at my home. The knock at my door sent shivers down my spine. It was early. It's too early. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon at this early hour, when most people were still sleeping. For a second, I considered ignoring it. Perhaps it was a neighbor. Perhaps there was a parcel. Maybe it wasn't what I thought it was. Then, another knock. This time, it was louder. Become more insistent. I took a slow breath, braced myself and walked to the door. My fingers paused on the handle, and my heart pounded in my chest. And then I opened it. There he was. My brother. His face contorted between fury and desperation, and his clothes wrinkled as if he hadn't slept. God's eyes. Bloodshot. Wild. Are you serious, Emma? His voice was as cutting as a sword shoved against my skin. What the hell is wrong with you? I blinked and kept my expression neutral. Good morning to you too. He scoffed and ran his hand through his already untidy hair. Don't do that. Don't act like this isn't a big deal. You blocked everyone. Mom is freaking out. Dad's losing his mind. You're just... What? Cutting us off? Pretending we don't exist? I crossed my arms and leaned against the door frame. I don't know, Jason. Maybe I just got tired of being treated like a piggy bank. His jaw clenched. Oh my God. Not this again, not this again. I gave out a sour laugh. Jason, I've been paying your rent for years. I've covered your bills, your food, even your stupid gym membership. And the one time I say no? The one time I set a boundary? Mom calls me a selfish brat, Dad says I'm unacceptable, and you show up at my door like I committed a crime. His lips parted as if he were going to argue, but no words emerged. So I continued going. And don't even try to pretend you care about me. I cocked my head, my voice cold. I saw the video. His face turned pallid. For the first time, genuine dread flashed across his eyes. What video? I smiled, but it was not a pleasant one. You know exactly what video. Jason shifted on his feet, looked aside as his hands balled into fists. Look, it wasn't serious, okay? We were just joking. You're being dramatic. Joking? My voice was soft, yet as sharp as glass. You all sat around laughing, calling me a pathetic failure. Saying I should be grateful for the chance to pay your bills. Do you know what that feels like, Jason? To hear your own family talk about you like that? He breathed sharply and rubbed his face. Emma, come on. No. I cut him off. You come on. You want money? Get a job. You want someone to take care of you? Find someone else. Because I'm done. Silence. He just stood there and stared at me. And for a little moment, I saw something spark across his face. Something rough. However, it was gone just as suddenly. You don't mean that, he grumbled. I retained his stare. Yes, I do. Another lapse in stillness. Then his expression darkened. His mouth curled into something unpleasant. Fine, he snapped. You want to be a selfish bitch? Go ahead. But don't come crawling back when you realize you have no one left. With that, he turned to walk away. I stood there, watching him leave. My chest was tense, yet my back was straight, because he was incorrect. I did have someone leave. I had myself. But, as I closed the door, letting out a trembling breath, my phone vibrated. I looked at the screen, and the familiar name flashed. It was my mom. But I was not going to pick up. Not this time. I had been at her mercy for so long. Her demands, her guilt trips, the way she used my own sense of duty against me, manipulating me into giving up all I had in order to keep her from breaking apart. Not anymore. I went away with the phone facing down. The truth was, I was done. I'm done with being a continual source of money. I'm tired of being the safety net that kept my family afloat when they couldn't be bothered to forge their own path in life. I'm done with lies and manipulation. They never asked me how I was doing. Never considered the toll it had on me to continually take up the slack. I had been carrying their weight for years, my mother's, my father's, and my brother's. All of them acting as if I owed them something, as if my life was just one long, endless repayment for everything they had done for me. But nobody had ever asked what I needed. Nobody had ever cared for me. And now, I was taking control. But my decision was not unnoticed. The following morning, when I sat in my living room, the silence felt oppressive. The weight of my decision was beginning to sink in. But there were no regrets. No second guessing. I had made the correct decision. Then, my doorbell rang. I was not surprised. It was Jason. I could tell by the way he knocked, demanding and impatient. This was the last person I expected to show up. But it's not surprising at all. I slowly opened the door, keeping my expression neutral. Emma, he began, his usual arrogant tone gone, replaced by something almost pleading. You need to listen to me. I did not welcome him in. I stood at the doorway, arms crossed. I don't need to listen to anything you have to say, Jason. He blinked, taken aback. No, you don't understand. His tone softened, almost desperate. Mom's freaking out. Dad's calling me, asking what's going on. They don't know how to fix this? You've cut us all off. You can't just leave us hanging like this. I scoffed and leaned against the doorframe. Oh, I'm sorry, did you think I was just going to keep enabling you? Keep paying your rent, your bills, and pretending everything was fine? No, Jason, I'm done. I don't care how much you or mom or dad beg. I'm done playing the role of the family ATM. His eyes flared with rage. You're acting like we've never done anything for you. Like we're all just users, right? I did not flinch. Oh, believe me, I know exactly what I've been to you all. I've been a cash machine. A free ride. And I'm tired of it. Jason's face twisted. You can't just leave us hanging like this. You owe us, Emma. The words stung. But they did not shatter me. They only made me more determined. I owe you, I said, my voice firm. I've given you everything. I paid for your rent, your groceries, your bills, while you just sat there and watched me do it. And you want to talk about owing? His fists clenched at his side. You'll regret this. You'll regret cutting us off. I couldn't help laughing. No, Jason. You'll regret it. Because I'm not the one who needs you anymore. Without waiting for his reaction, I slammed the door in his face. It felt nice. But I sensed that the drama was far from ended. Later that night, my phone vibrated again. I almost did not want to check it, but curiosity gnawed at me. It was from my father. Dad. Emma, we raised you. Do not assume you can simply walk away from everything we've done for you. You're making an enormous mistake. Come back. We'll chat about it. We will fix this. I could almost sense desperation in his words. I sat there for a time, phone still in hand. I could have ignored it. I may also have blocked him. But I had a better idea. I wasn't simply going to block them. I was going to make them pay for every single lie, every single time they took me for granted. And it was going to start now. I stood up, approached my desk, and opened my laptop. It was time to deliver a message they would never forget. So I started typing. I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I wasn't going to sit back and let them reintegrate into my life as if nothing had happened. I was done being the punching bag. This time, I was in control. I thought about everything I had done for them. All of the payments I'd made, the bailouts. I swallowed my pride and helped them, even though I knew I was the one being drained. No more. Now was their turn to feel the consequences of their conduct. I opened my email and began typing. First, I gathered all of the financial records. Every payment I'd ever made on their invoices. Each bank transfer. Every check I'd sent over the years to compensate for their faults. It was time to remind them of the things they had taken from me. I added a remark to the top of the email. Here's a detailed summary of everything I've done for you over the years. I'm done being your lifeline. I'll no longer be your ATM. And I'll no longer let you make me feel guilty for choosing myself. Consider this my final invoice. You don't owe me anything anymore, but you will owe yourself the realization of how much I've sacrificed, all because I thought family was supposed to help each other, not drain each other. Then I added the receipts, bills, and payments I'd sent. But it was not the end. Definitely not. I signed on to the family group chat, which used to keep me on edge with their complaints and demands. I browsed through the messages, reading the ones where they said they needed me and guilted me into assisting them. Then I tried something I hadn't done in years. I responded. You all talk a lot about what you've done for me, but you've forgotten how much I've given up for you. And here's the reality check. You never needed me. You just used me. I'm done. This is my last message. Don't ever contact me again. I sent it. The silence that followed was nearly lovely. I slumped back in my chair, feeling the weight of the decision wash over me. For once, there were no more phone calls. No more guilt trips. No more pretending they had any authority over me. They might continue their manipulations, lies, and empty promises. I was free. But just when I thought it was finished, I got one last message. From Jason. You're making a mistake, Emma. You'll regret this. Family sticks together. I smiled to myself. I knew he was only attempting to get under my skin. But this time, it didn't work. Because I didn't need them. I had a life. My freedom. And it was enough. It wasn't the dramatic explosion I had envisioned. It wasn't a great clash. But in its own way, this was much better. I had assumed command without anyone seeing it coming. And the best part. They lost their control over me. As I turned off my phone for the night, a sensation of calm washed over me. I did not have to play their game. I didn't have to continue sacrificing myself for those who didn't value me. It wasn't the revenge I expected. It was quieter. Be more deliberate. And far more satisfying. Now I could finally breathe. And the best part, I could finally live for myself, and that, in the end, was the sweetest victory. Reflection. Wow, what a ride that was, right? It's incredible to think of how much Emma had to endure for so long. But in the end, she gained control of her life. I admire how she refused to let her family's conflict and guilt bring her down. Instead of a massive conflict, she simply cut them off quietly, but with force. Making a scene is not always the best way to exact revenge. It's about reclaiming your life and showing that you're no longer a doormat. But here's the thing, not everyone would have handled it that way. Some could argue that she should have pushed for the relationship. Maybe even give them a second opportunity. Others may believe she made the correct decision by removing them entirely. So what are your thoughts? Do you agree with Emma's decision? Was her silent vengeance satisfying, or overly harsh? Please share your ideas in the comments below. I would love to know what you think. My husband and mother-in-law treated me like a servant, mocking my efforts, demanding obedience, and making me feel invisible. Alex's words cut through the clatter of dishes like a keen scalpel. "Alara, bring me some tea now." I halted, my hands dipped in soapy water. "Hold on, I'm doing the dishes." "What?" His tone was incredulous and impatient. "Stop that and then bring me the tea right away. Can't you obey simple commands?" "But," I began, only to be interrupted. "What a useless wife you are." "Make me some sweet coffee," said another voice. Mrs. Whitmore, my mother-in-law, spoke from the living room. She sat there munching a slice of cake she had grabbed from the fridge, her eyes gleaming with malice. I sighed and looked at the stack of dishes. "There are so many. Leave them for later." "Just do what we say, useless wife," Alex's voice hissed, each syllable hurting. I was Alara, a 28-year-old working mother whose life felt more like a jail than a home. Married at 23, I had hoped for love and friendship, but instead found myself in the hands of Alex and his domineering mother. Our 4-year-old son was the only bright spot in an otherwise dark existence. We lived in Alex's parents' house, a decision foisted on me under the premise of caring for Mrs. Whitmore after my father-in-law died. Initially, I sympathized with her alleged anguish, but it quickly became evident that I was nothing more than a part in her cruel game of home oppression. Cooking, cleaning, and working just weren't enough. My attempts were treated with derision, and my meals were either left untouched or sharply ridiculed. "The stir-fry is so half-hearted," Mrs. Whitmore would remark. "Cook it properly from scratch." "I'm busy and can only do simple things," I'd say, trying to maintain a calm voice. "That's why I hate backtalk from my daughter-in-law," she quipped. "Cook from scratch? Why don't you cook? You are a good cook, correct?" I risked to react once and soon regretted it. "Why would I do housekeeping with you here?" She responded coldly and dismissively. "Are you out of your mind?" Their brutality grew with time, progressing from harsh words to a chilling quiet. They began to entirely disregard me, as if I were a ghost in my own home. My presence, which was previously underestimated, now appeared completely invisible. 5 years passed in this suffocating environment. Alex and I turned 35 and 33 respectively. Our son developed, but the unpleasant atmosphere in the house remained constant. My mother-in-law, now 63, appeared to thrive on my suffering. One evening, as I trudged home from work, a heavy revelation hit me. They saw my existence as meaningless. I was a shadow, unnoticed and unheard. The only voice that acknowledged me was my son's. The idea of losing even that minor recognition was agonizing. When I returned home, I started cooking right away, hoping to lift my spirits. I made mapo tofu, fried chicken, and a stir-fry with bell peppers and pork, attempting to bring some regularity to our dinner. "Bring me the mayo," Alex said unexpectedly, breaking his long silence. "Sure, here you are," I said, handing him the mayonnaise. His first words to me in ages were not thanks or discussion, but rather a command. It was the last straw, the limit of my patience and tolerance. Mrs. Whitmore demanded, "Clean the toilet." "What? Now?" I was shocked. "Yes, now," she demanded, her voice full of hate. I snapped back, unable to suppress my annoyance. "Don't say such a thing while we're eating. It's nasty, just like your heart," she said. Our dispute immediately escalated, with Alex interjecting and demanding that I apologize to his mother. But I refused, standing firm for the first time in years. The conflict reached its climax, and a conclusion formed within me. I needed to get out of this toxic environment, not just for myself, but also for my baby. I returned to my room, my determination stiffening. I downloaded divorce papers, completed them, and slapped them in front of Alex. His amazement was evident, but I felt just icy determination. "I'm filing these," I announced, my voice firm. As I stood there, looking at my husband's puzzled expression, I realized I had finally stepped out of the shadows. It was time to regain my life. The days after I declared my divorce were a blur of frigid stares and stinging remarks, but in the midst of the chaos, I discovered an unexpected sense of freedom. Mrs. Whitmore looked at the food I was serving one evening with distaste. "You call this food? Even a child cooks better." I bit my tongue, concentrating on my son's happy expression. "Eat up, sweetheart. I made your favorite tonight," Alex added in, his voice full of sarcasm. "Oh, playing the perfect mother now, are we? What a joke." I could feel my rage rising, but I held my cool. "I'm just trying to make a nice dinner for our son." Mrs. Whitmore snorted. "Don't act high and mighty. You're just a burden in this house." The tension around the table was apparent. Alex's attempts to insult me grew more intense. "So, Alara, have you thought about how you'll survive after the divorce? You can barely keep a house, let alone your own life." I stared him directly in the eyes. "I have been supporting this family for years. I'm not worried about taking care of myself and our son." His smirk faded somewhat, and a spark of concern appeared on his face. Mrs. Whitmore was quick to intercede. "Don't be absurd. You need us more than we need you." The talk drifted to finances, which they typically avoided. "You do realize that without my salary, this household would crumble," I said to myself rather than to them. Mrs. Whitmore sneered. "We'd manage. We don't need your pity money." But Alex's silence spoke volumes. He understood the truth. They would be in serious financial trouble if I did not provide a living. Their behavior deteriorated during the next few days. Mrs. Whitmore alternated between trying to sweet-talk me into staying and shouting insults when I refused. Alex, on the other hand, appeared confused, his arrogance eroding as the reality of his financial dependency became clear. One afternoon, I overheard a talk between them that chilled me to the core. "She can't just leave us like this," Alex growled. "We need her money." Mrs. Whitmore's response was chilly and calculating. "Do not worry. I have a plan. We'll make her life so unpleasant that she won't want to leave." Hearing their genuine objectives exposed was a revelation. They did not care about me or our son. It was all about power and wealth. That night, as I lay in bed, an idea began to emerge in my head. If they wanted a fight, I'd give them one. But it would not be fought with words or trivial disputes. I'd strike them where it hurts the most, their pride and their pocketbook. The following morning, I began putting my plan into action. I contacted a lawyer, a bright, no-nonsense woman who was highly recommended. "I want a divorce, and I want to make sure they don't get a penny more than they deserve," I informed the woman. She nodded, her eyes bright with determination. "We'll make sure of it. You've been the only breadwinner, correct? We'll make use of that." My resolve got stronger with each passing day. I began documenting everything: insults, financial manipulation, and even little grievances. It was time to turn the tables. It was time to accept the repercussions of their deeds. As I prepared my case, I felt a sense of empowerment. For the first time in years, I felt like I had power over my own fate. The shades of scorn were slowly lifting, revealing a new dawn. As the divorce proceedings began, the mood in the house became more caustic. Yet, with each passing day, my panic faded, replaced by a steely resolve. Mrs. Whitmore decided to try a new strategy one evening. "Alara, dear, why don't we forget all this nasty business? You know we're family." Her comments were insincere. I met her stare unwaveringly. "Family doesn't treat each other the way you've treated me." Alex, who had been silently watching, scoffed. "Oh, playing the victim now? You're not as innocent as you pretend to be." I felt a wave of rage, but I kept my voice composed. "I'm not playing anything, Alex. I'm just no longer willing to be your scapegoat." As is typically the case, the subject turned to finances. "You think you can just take our son and leave? How will you support him?" Alex was skeptical. I grinned with a tiny, confident curl of my lips. "I've been supporting this family for years. I think I can manage." Mrs. Whitmore turned her gaze into a sneer. "You're nothing without us. You'll come crawling back." But their remarks no longer had force over me. I recognized my worth and knew the truth. The following day, I met with my lawyer again. She outlined the strategy clearly. "We'll expose their financial dependency on you. It will play a crucial role in the custody battle and the division of assets." I nodded, feeling vindicated. The law was on my side, and I was prepared to fight back. At home, the tension had reached a boiling point. Mrs. Whitmore's attempts to discredit me got increasingly desperate. "You think you're so smart," she sneered one evening. "But you're just a cold-hearted woman abandoning your family." I stared her directly in the eyes. I'm a woman who's finally standing up for herself." Alex leaped in, his voice full of fury. "You'll regret this? You can't survive without me." However, his threats fell on deaf ears. I was done being intimidated. As the days passed, my preparations for the court battle became more intense. I obtained financial accounts, documented their harsh remarks, and gathered evidence of their negligence. One afternoon, as I was arranging my documents, my kid approached me. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" His voice was soft and hesitant. I drew him into an embrace, feeling a flash of protectiveness. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to be just fine. We're leaving this place, and we're going to start a new, happy life, just you and me." His arms tightened around me, and I knew I'd made the correct decision. I was fighting not just for myself, but also for my son's future. The court hearing date approached, bringing with it the prospect of impending freedom. I was prepared to confront Alex and Mrs. Whitmore and put an end to their tyranny and emotional abuse. I was ready to take back my life and give my son the peace and happiness he deserved. It was time for justice, and I was determined to see it delivered. The court hearing day arrived, and I was filled with both dread and determination. I felt a sense of surrealism when I sat across from Alex and Mrs. Whitmore in court. This was the moment when everything changed. The proceedings started with frigid formality. Alex's lawyer portrayed him as a dedicated spouse and parent battling under unjust accusations. Mrs. Whitmore played the sorrowful mother-in-law who had been wronged by her ungrateful daughter-in-law. However, their performance was apparent, and their lies were flimsy. When my turn came, I spoke clearly and steadily. "I've been the only provider for this family for years. My husband's unemployment and his mother's manipulative behavior have been continual sources of stress." Alex intervened, his voice tinged with feigned hurt. "Alara, how can you say such things? I've always backed you." I turned to him, my stare steadfast. "Alex, support is more than words. It's about deeds, and your actions have only demonstrated selfishness and harshness." The judge listened closely as I presented my evidence, which included financial accounts, audio recordings of their verbal abuse, and testimony from neighbors who witnessed their behavior. The fact was undeniable. As the evidence accumulated, Alex's facade began to collapse. Mrs. Whitmore's poise shattered, and her innocence slipped away. The courtroom was quiet, the air thick with anxiety. Then came the realization that sealed their doom. My lawyer submitted photos and documentation confirming Alex's adultery and Mrs. Whitmore's clandestine affair with Mr. Harwood, a wealthy neighbor. Murmurs broke out in the courtroom as the photographs of them in compromising postures were shown. Their lie was exposed for all to see. Alex's face became ashen, his eyes wide with surprise. Mrs. Whitmore's face twisted into rage, and her hands trembled. You compromised our privacy," she yelled, her voice shrill. I glanced at her, my voice steady yet forceful. I revealed the truth, which you both had been hiding for far too long." The court shouted for order, but the harm was already done. Their credibility was shattered, and their lies were revealed in the bright light of the courtroom. As the session concluded, the judge's conclusion was apparent. I was given full custody of our son, and a fair distribution of assets was ordered. Alex and Mrs. Whitmore were left with just their destroyed reputations. Walking out of the courtroom, I felt a weight lifted from my shoulders. The years of deception and emotional assault had finally ended. I had confronted my oppressors and emerged victorious. But the finest moment was when my son raced into my arms outside the courthouse, his face beaming with relief and joy. "We did it, Mom," he exclaimed, his voice full of delight. "Yes, we did," I said, holding him close. "We're free now. This is only the beginning for us." As we walked away hand in hand, I realized this was more than simply a personal win. It was a victory for everybody who has ever been made to feel little, helpless, or unworthy. It represented a victory for truth and justice. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one full of optimism and the promise of a better future. The court verdict had an immediate and chaotic impact. The story of Alex and Mrs. Whitmore's deception spread like wildfire, ruining their reputations in our little neighborhood. They could no longer hide behind their facade of respectability. In the days following the verdict, I concentrated on rebuilding my life with my kid, but I couldn't deny the gratification of knowing Alex and Mrs. Whitmore were facing the repercussions of their decisions. One evening, as I was making dinner, I had an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Harwood, Mr. Harwood's wife, appeared, her eyes crimson from unshed tears. "Alara, I've heard about everything. I can't believe what Sylvia, Mrs. Whitmore, did, she exclaimed, her voice breaking. I invited her in and offered a cup of tea. As we sat at the kitchen table, she expressed her sadness. I trusted her as a neighbor and friend. And to think she was having an affair with my husband. Her voice trembled, so I listened and offered words of comfort. Mrs. Whitmore's actions had clearly caused far more damage than she had planned. The next day, I saw Alex in town. He was a shell of his former self, his arrogance replaced with a defeated expression. Alara, please. Can we speak? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I paused, facing him. What's there to talk about, Alex? He fidgeted, unwilling to meet my gaze. I apologize for everything. I didn't understand how much I relied on you and your strength. His apologies, however late, reflected the shift in power. He had lost everything, his dignity, his home, and his family, and in that loss, he had finally admitted his own flaws. Mrs. Whitmore, however, received the greatest criticism. Her affair with Mr. Harwood had not only wrecked her reputation but also resulted in legal problems. Mrs. Harwood sought a divorce and sued her for alienation of affection. I learned of Mrs. Whitmore's dilemma from neighbors. Whispers and tales depicted a lady undone by her own acts. She had become an outsider, rejected by individuals she had previously considered friends. I saw her at the grocery store one day, hurrying through the aisles with downcast eyes. Our paths touched, and for a brief moment, our eyes met. The sight of hatred and defeat in her eyes was undeniable. You did this to me, she said under her breath as she walked by. I watched Sylvia leave, her figure slowly fading as she hurried away, her eyes filled with resentment. I felt a strange mix of pity for her and vindication for myself. No, Sylvia, I whispered under my breath. You did this to yourself. The tides of justice had finally shifted. Everything they had done to me, all the lies, the manipulation, the emotional torment, had come full circle. The consequences of their actions were now irreversible. I could see them struggling, living in the aftermath of the deceit they had carefully cultivated over the years. Their false facade had shattered, and now they were forced to face the reality of what they had become. As I watched them suffer through the consequences of their own making, I felt a sense of calm satisfaction. But it wasn't just about them getting what they deserved. The real reward was in the freedom I had gained. The best form of retribution, I realized, was not in revenge, but in living a life full of peace and strength, free from the toxicity and harmful influence they had cast upon me for so long. My focus shifted back to what truly mattered, the future I was building with my son. We were free now, free from the prison they had trapped me in for all those years. I had broken free, and now, I was living the life I had always dreamed of. This wasn't just a story of revenge or victory, it was a story of liberation. It was a powerful testament to my strength and resilience. I had taken control of my destiny, broken the chains of abuse, and freed myself from the tyranny of their manipulation. As I looked ahead, I knew that the future was bright, and the best was yet to come. I was no longer a prisoner to their cruelty. I was free, and the world was mine to conquer. My husband is blind to his work wife, ruining our marriage. She manipulates him and even calls him her husband right in front of me. Original post, February 9, 2025. I, 31 female, am at my wit's end with my husband's, 32 male coworker Sarah, 30 female, and his complete inability to see what's happening. I'm not usually one for Reddit, but I need to know if I'm going crazy here. Where do I even start? 3 years ago, my husband Mark started working with Sarah. At first, I tried to be welcoming. I invited her to our BBQs, included her in group outings, and genuinely tried to be friendly. Big mistake. She spent the entire time making backhanded comments about everything from my career. Oh, you're just a yoga instructor? How peaceful. To my cooking. I guess not everyone can master basic seasoning. The real problem is that Mark thinks she's just being funny. Last month, she literally threw away the anniversary mug I gave him because it clashed with the office aesthetic. When I got upset, Mark said I was being too sensitive and that Sarah just has high standards for office decor. It was a mug with our wedding photo on it. Some greatest hits from Sarah. She scheduled a mandatory work dinner on our anniversary. She convinced Mark not to take a promotion because it would mean working with a different team. She posts daily photos of them together with hashtags like work power couple and work spouse. She tells everyone at their office that she takes better care of him than I do. She changed his coffee order and now tells everyone she trained him right. The worst part? My husband is completely blind to all of this. Yesterday, he actually told me about how Sarah said our new house, which we spent months searching for, was charming in a starter home kind of way, He repeated this while laughing. I tried talking to him about it, but Sarah has convinced him I'm just insecure. She's managed to insert herself into every aspect of our lives. They text constantly, even on weekends. She knows his schedule better than I do. She rearranged his entire desk and office wardrobe because his style was too suburban husband. That's what he is. Last week, I suggested marriage counseling. He looked genuinely confused. He of course went and talked to Sarah about it. I found out from another coworker that she's been telling people that Mark and I are going through a rough patch, and that she's just being a good friend by giving him someone to talk to. We weren't going through anything until she started this nonsense. The breaking point? I stopped by his office to surprise him with lunch. I know, but it was his birthday and Sarah was supposedly out sick. Guess who was there? Sarah. She'd miraculously recovered, and bought him a cake that said, "To my work hubby," with a photo of them from the office holiday party. She saw me and said, "Oh, Amy. You came too. How nice. Mark, you didn't tell me your real wife was coming. I'm not crazy, right? This woman is trying to destroy my marriage while my husband stands there grinning like it's all some big joke. What should I do? Divorce seems extreme, but I'm running out of options here. TLDR. My husband's work wife is actively trying to sabotage our marriage while he remains completely oblivious to her obvious manipulation. ETA. I should have stated that the promotion wasn't one that would increase his salary but his title. It would give him more leadership experience. It still blows my mind that he turned it down just so he could stay on the same team as her. ETA. I should have told the mug story in its entirety. She accidentally broke the mug. I noticed it was gone when I was visiting him one day and I asked him about it. He said she accidentally knocked it over and then later he repeated a joke she made about how it didn't fit the office aesthetic. Top comments. Comment 1. Sarah would not be able to sabotage your marriage if your husband wasn't allowing it. Comment 2. You have a husband problem. Go to counseling and get professional help to communicate your concerns. Remind him that he's married to you, not Sarah, so her opinions shouldn't matter when it comes to your marriage. Good luck, but be prepared for the worst. Comment 3. Yeah, this guy isn't oblivious, he's complicit. He knows what's happening, and he likes the attention. He is happy to let his girlfriend disrespect his wife. Update. February 13, 2025, 4 days later. Hi, I, 31 female, posted a few days ago. I really didn't expect my post to blow up the way it did. I got so overwhelmed by all the comments that I haven't responded to any. I want to address everyone who says it's fake. I understand why you think that, but this is my personal hell. I only listen to Reddit stories on TikTok, but when this reached its boiling point, I just needed a place to talk. So I made an account and tried to yell into the void. Well, the void turned out to be less empty than I thought. Now, to why everyone is here. The update. Before I talked to my husband, 32 male, I decided to do some investigation. I started with his phone and read all the messages between him and Sarah. She badmouthed me a few times. He did nothing to defend me but didn't engage either. She was flirty. He wasn't really flirty back. They talked a lot, and he praised her frequently for her work ethic and intelligence. I didn't see anything about cheating. I checked his email, nothing. I checked his work email, nothing. I looked through our other devices, nothing. I searched high and low for a second phone, nothing. Everything I found was always dancing that line. Nothing was outright cheating, but here are the things I found that did hurt my feelings. He has lunch with her, and only her, every day in the office. They don't really like anyone else, so they'll criticize others and say, "Let's talk more at lunch, they're serving XYZ today." He'd say things like, "I'm sure if you were a wife, you would XYZ." He always kept it as a wife, and not my wife, but it still upset me. She admitted to breaking the mug on purpose. He didn't get upset with her, just said, "Yeah, the photo gifs are kind of corny." I confronted him. I laid it all out, and while he wasn't upset, he did try to brush things off. He said I was being sensitive and overreacting. I told him if we didn't have a real conversation about this, I would file for divorce. That got his attention, and he sat down with me. He admitted that at first, he found it odd that Sarah was trying so hard. He saw her trying hard with all the men in the office. The more attention she gave him, the more he enjoyed it, and the more he responded, the more attention she gave, until she just had her sights on him. He knew some of the other men were envious, and he liked that too. He admitted that eventually, he just got too deep. He said he knew it was wrong but had gotten addicted to the attention and didn't want her to move on to another man. So he indulged her sometimes at my expense. He said it was just nice to have two women in the two major parts of his life, stating that he knew we'd rarely see one another, so what was the harm? He reiterated that he never ever physically cheated with her but admitted it could be called an emotional affair. It was painful, I won't hide that. I mean really painful, like I wasn't enough. I told him from this point on, he needed to stop communicating with Sarah and ask to be transferred or switch jobs altogether. Now folks, I mean it when I tell you this. He lost his shit. He began raising his voice, saying things like he never cheated, it was all above board, and I couldn't control who he talked with at work. He called me a narcissist and a control freak. He told me I had no idea how hard it was, how much stress he had in the office, and that his personal relationship with Sarah helps a lot. Taking it away would just damage his mental health. It got so bad that I started crying. I couldn't take it anymore and decided to leave. I packed a small bag and called my MIL, she's the only family I have here. I gave her a rundown of what was going on, and she offered her home to me. I'm staying here and just hoping my husband calms down so we can revisit this. I want to work it out. I love him more than anything. I will try harder to answer comments on this post, and I will definitely update if something new happens. This has been really therapeutic and makes me feel less alone. TLDR. I confronted my husband about his work wife, and he lost it on me. Now I'm staying with my mother-in-law. Top comments. Comment 1, welp, I kind of figured he wasn't that clueless. This is a full-blown emotional affair. From experience, things will only escalate when they are in bed together. Protect your peace, because he sure doesn't give a damn about your feelings. Stay strong. Comment 2. Jumped right from admitted it could be called an emotional affair, to, he began raising his voice, saying things like he never cheated. OP made a valiant effort, but it doesn't seem like this marriage can be saved. Additional comments from OOP about her MIL. My mill is on my side and told me point blank that he is wrong. However, she said she doesn't want to get in the middle because she doesn't want to damage the relationship with either one of us. She told me I'm welcome as long as I need, but she won't bring anything up to her son until he brings it up to her. My MIL agrees his actions are wrong but doesn't want things to escalate or to damage her relationship with either one of us, so she is staying out of it unless he contacts her. As for my husband, he has tried to reach out. He's called, left message, texted. I let him know I was safe and left it at that. He will message or call every few hours, but we haven't talked. New update. Update 2, February 14, 2025, one day from previous update. Well, I'm back. First, I want to address some of the negative comments. To all the people saying they're Team Sarah, and hoping Sarah and my husband get together, I even saw a nasty comment saying Sarah and my husband would be the office power couple. How can you sit here and say nothing's going on? You claim my husband didn't cheat and I'm being crazy, yet in the same breath wish they would get together? You're contradicting yourself because deep down you know something romantic was developing. Now for the update. My husband came to my mother-in-law's house, she didn't call him. He knew I was there because I told him, and he said he wanted to talk. Some big things happened in such a short time. He wanted to explain. According to my husband, after I left, he started to reflect, he did call his mom and they had a long talk. I didn't know any of this. She asked him if he was happy with me and he said yes, but I made him extremely happy. I was a good wife and a great partner. This is kind of what sunk into him, that he was being juvenile for wanting attention from another woman. I did ask him why he always brushed things off and never took action before. He said he couldn't explain it, it just felt good. He assured me he never wanted to sleep with her and never advanced things that way. It was just nice having someone around who was fawning over him, like a fan. For those who said he didn't know what an emotional affair was and was just agreeing with me, you were right. He admitted he didn't really understand what an emotional affair was, but after looking it up, he agreed that's what it was, though unintentional. He said he didn't want to lose his friend, so he just went along with a lot of what she did. He admitted he was deep into a fog, but me leaving and this conversation with his mom was the one thing that brought him out of it. He said he didn't want to fight. My husband is big on giving me my space, so when I left he didn't chase after me because he thought it would be best for us to just cool down and think about this and hopefully come back and discuss it more rationally. He did reach out to Sarah. Though they didn't meet in person, they had a phone call. He told her they couldn't remain as close, that their out-of-office texts and calls needed to stop, that he would get a replacement mug she wasn't to touch, and that they needed to cut back on their lunches. He wanted to handle this before talking to me, to show he was serious. Sarah didn't take it well. She started berating me, saying I was forcing him to do this. My husband stopped her and said no. He was doing this because his marriage was important. He admitted letting things go too far but clarified he had no romantic interest in her. He told her if she had feelings for him, she needed to distance herself immediately. Sarah ended up ruining their friendship herself. Though my husband was willing to maintain a more distant friendship, her comments about me and him, claiming she'd never want him and that everything she did was because she knew we weren't meant to be together, and she was trying to open his eyes. He said he couldn't believe he'd never seen how vindictive and awful she was almost venomous. It didn't end well. After handling that situation, he came to see me, wanting to ensure I knew he understood and was taking the proper steps. He said we could do whatever I needed. I know some of you will say I'm wrong, that divorce is the only option because he had an emotional affair. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not divorcing my husband. I told him we needed counseling for both of us. Yes, going through all his devices, emails, and texts might have been extreme. He agreed it felt like a breach of privacy but understood given the circumstances. I told him we both needed to work on things. As of right now, I guess you could say that we're separated. We're not staying in the same house. We're going to attend counseling. I don't want to just jump back into things with him. I don't want it to seem like it was okay to make me feel like I was the second option to ignore all those red flags and to brush me off. This has to be worked on. I'm leaving his mother's house and staying with a friend. I'm not sure if anyone's going to want an update after this. Sorry it's so anticlimactic. Sorry it's typical. Oh, you just got back together. I mean it is but it isn't. I love my husband. I know he loves me. I don't think everything is an end-all be-all. Yes, it's a terrible situation. Yes, he did a terrible thing but I want my marriage to last so we're giving it another go. I genuinely hope this is my last update, but if it's not, y'all will know. Thank you for all the messages. All the support for everything really has been a huge help. Top comments. Comment 1. Honestly, this was the update I was hoping for. I'm happy he recognized it and that you two are working for your marriage. All the best and I hope your marriage is stronger after this episode. Comment 2. Glad to hear that the fog is lifting. I hope he sticks to his word and distances himself from Sarah. I would even involve HR to let them know what is going on in case she gets vindictive and tries to cause trouble at work. I'm happy to hear that you're proceeding cautiously. I hope everything goes well for you in the end. Third update. Update 3. February 18, 2025, 4 days from previous update, but removed due to posting too many updates. Hi Reddit, we are continuing our work-wife saga. As a lot of you predicted in my last update, Sarah wasn't happy about my husband ending their friendship and trying to put a distance between him and her. I seriously thought she was going to reach out to me but she never did. Why? Because this was never about me. I was not even on her radar except for somebody to tear down. I will give Sarah one thing, she is extremely efficient. She started her campaign long before Monday morning. Over the weekend she reached out to several of my husband's coworkers, mostly male. She told them that my husband had randomly stopped being friends with her and she suspected it was my fault. She said she couldn't believe it, everyone knew how close they were. She just felt bad for him. Wanted to be a friend for him and hopefully help him out of our terrible marriage. She went on and on about how she couldn't believe how much this is going to affect her during her working hours and that she didn't know if she can continue working at this job. One of the female workers at my husband's job messaged me all of this. As a lot of you predicted, she is gearing up to accuse my husband of sexual harassment. Monday alone she has put herself in the path of my husband multiple times. It kind of feels like she's setting up to do something and he said she had an argument because she's doing a lot of odd things, at least according to my husband. Think stuff like intentionally following my husband into a room or a section of the office that is somewhat closed off, accidentally emailing him or forwarding him things, going to his cubicle multiple times a day for no reason, sitting close to him in meetings. It seems harmless but really it feels like she's gearing up for something. My husband did go to HR first thing Monday morning and like I kind of thought they pretty much said they can't do anything unless it affects work or working hours. His HR is not the greatest. He did let them know what she was doing today but honestly, I don't think they took him seriously. We've been thinking about moving. The only thing that keeps us here is really his mom, so he might just transfer jobs? We're not really sure. I hope things don't escalate anymore and since he went to HR already, I'm hoping that nothing big happens. I'd like to give a little update about our counseling. To all the people who tell me that I'm making a mistake by giving my husband another chance and trying to work it out. I am so happy I don't listen to you. I understand it was a shitty situation. I lived through it. I know it is. I know how it felt. But counseling has revealed a lot about my husband that I didn't even know. Apparently he was bullied severely in high school and he kind of went through a little glow up when he went into college. Sarah is definitely one of those stereotypical blonde pretty girls, and my husband admits that it did kind of feel like he finally got his chance to be popular in a social setting. My husband admitted that Sarah basically mirrored everything about him. He likes his dislikes. She talked to him like he walked on water. It definitely sounded like she was boosting his ego in a manipulative fashion. Like I said, I understand this isn't just a forgive and move on kind of situation, but hearing my husband talk about how it felt the way it affected him, it made me have a lot more sympathy for him. I still haven't come back home, but we're doing it one day at a time. I went and had lunch with him on Monday, and I'm going again today. I'm trying to be there for him so he doesn't feel alone. I'm really ready for all this to die down. I'm hoping it doesn't get taken farther at work, but if it does, we'll deal with it. OP, your husband should be documenting everything, in writing, as it occurs. And then, provide it to management. In addition, a consultation and possible engagement of a seasoned labor law employment attorney.